Naruto Reborn Wind Shadow. Attack the Country of Fire in the beginning chapter 181 to 200. Moonlight Hayate is now also a bit regretful. Just a while ago, the Sand Village suddenly launched a rebellion, and the Chunin exam was suspended. Facing Maki, the Jonin from the Sand Village, who was eyeing him covetously, Moonlight Hayate, unable to spare any effort, could only let the other participant in this match, Sasuke Uchiha, pursue Gaara and the others who had escaped. Because in Moonlight Hayate's view, Sasuke Uchiha's performance in this match had already reached the strength of a Chunin, and even an outstanding one among Chunin. But he didn't expect the change to be so fast. Hearing Moonlight Hayate's words, Kakashi's expression also changed drastically. However, he didn't have time to waste, and immediately ordered, "Hayate, please tell the village about this and have them send people to support us. Guy, you and I will go find Sasuke." "I understand, Kakashi-senpai." Moonlight Hayate's figure disappeared instantly. Seeing Kakashi and Guy about to leave, Naruto and Sakura, who were on the side, immediately shouted anxiously, "Wait, Kakashi-sensei, we want to go too." This made Shikamaru, who was on the side, a little embarrassed. Of course, he knew this was very dangerous, and reason told him not to go, but if he didn't say anything at this time, it seemed a little disloyal. "Add me in too, of course." Kakashi also wanted to refuse. It was a bit ridiculous to let 3 children go on such a dangerous mission. But looking at Naruto's firm eyes, and recalling his performance in this Chunin exam, he finally nodded. "You can go, but from now on, all your actions must be under Shikamaru's command." Kakashi was also worried that he wouldn't be able to take care of Naruto and Sakura at times, so it was good to have Shikamaru around. Shikamaru, upon hearing this, was speechless, and could only complain about the trouble before quickly following. Outside the Leaf Village. The Sand Village ninjas, who were originally ambushing outside the gate, preparing to invade the Leaf Village, had just started fighting with the Leaf Village ninjas. Maki appeared and brought the Kazecage's order, telling all the Sand Village ninjas to withdraw from the battle. Although the Sand Village ninjas were a little puzzled, the plan they had prepared for so long was suddenly cancelled, but they still obeyed Maki's order and quickly retreated. Soon after, Maki caught up with Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara, who had retreated in advance. "Maki-sensei." The 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Maki's arrival. Maki also rushed to the front and nodded, but when he looked at Gaara, who was holding his head and looking pained, his expression changed drastically, because he had already sensed that the tailed beast inside Gaara was about to go berserk. Just then, a Sand Village ninja stepped forward and said, "Minister, there are Leaf Village ninjas secretly following us. It's Sasuke Uchiha." At this moment, a hint of greed really arose in Maki's heart, but soon Gaara's painful wails sobered him up. "No, we must return to the village immediately. Sasuke Uchiha will definitely not come alone. Shukaku cannot be lost." Yes, these ninjas also knew the seriousness of the tailed beast. To be honest, they weren't too worried about Gaara's life. They were worried that the tailed beast would go berserk here, and after no one could control it, the Sand Village would lose Shukaku. So, under the cover of the Sand Village group, Gaara and the others headed towards the Land of Wind. In the protection of the crowd, Temari looked at her younger brother Gaara, who was being carried on Kankuro's shoulder and looked pained, and then looked at the village ninjas who had suddenly retreated, and couldn't help but ask her teacher. "Teacher, what's going on? Why the sudden?" Maki's answer was simple. "This is the Kazekage-sama's order. We'll talk about the specifics when the Kazekage-sama returns." However, although he said that, Maki felt uneasy when he remembered the state he had seen the Kazekage-sama in just now. "Father." Maki's words stunned Temari and Kankuro for a moment, and then they stopped talking. Although from a bloodline perspective, their relationship was that of father and daughter or father and son, but apart from the beautiful memories of childhood, their relationship became more like pure superiors and subordinates after they grew up. Leaf Village, Root. As time slowly passed, although the Root ninjas had tried their best to find him, they still couldn't find any trace of the 4th Kazekage. "Useless, you can't even do this little thing well." Looking at Danzo's gloomy expression, Yamanaka-fu cautiously said, "Danzo-sama, could the Kazekage have already left?" Leave? The sand gold is still under our feet. How could that Kazekage leave? Speaking of this, Danzo also fell into deep thought, staring at every corner of the entire root base and said, what exactly is his purpose? Yamanaka Fu also fell into deep thought and said, but even the root's bugs can't find the other party's trace? Where can this Kazekage hide? You must know that the entire root organization's base can be said to be under the surveillance of the root's bugs. Danzo's body suddenly trembled, his pupils shrank, and his body immediately moved. Because he thought of it, the only place in the entire root organization's base that even the root's bugs couldn't approach. Even Yamanaka Fu and Aburame Torun, his right-hand men, didn't know about that place. Before long, Danzo arrived at his destination. When he saw the seal that had been broken, his expression immediately turned gloomy. How did the Sand Village's Kazekage know about this place? Could it be Orochimaru? But even so, how did he break the seal here? Just as Danzo was pondering, Yamanaka Fu, who was here for the first time, asked in surprise. Danzo-sama. Where is this? Danzo didn't hide it, because he still needed Yamanaka Fu's help next. This is where the second Hokage-sama and Mito-sama built together to seal the first Hokage-sama's body, and it is also the predecessor of Root. Having no time to pay attention to Yamanaka Fu's shock, Danzo directly asked. The seal has been broken, which means that the Kazekage seems to be inside. Use your sensory ability to probe and see. Yes. Yamanaka Fu immediately used his sensory ability, closed his eyes and sensed in detail, then frowned. After a while, he opened his eyes and reported. Reporting to Danzo-sama, I didn't feel anything? Danzo was stunned. Didn't feel anything, what about chakra? No, perhaps the Sand Village's fourth Kazekage has some special ability to shield perception? Danzo felt more and more that something was wrong. He didn't care whether the fourth Kazekage had any ability to shield perception, but even if Yamanaka Fu couldn't sense the fourth Kazekage's chakra, he shouldn't be unable to sense the first Hokage's huge chakra inside. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. Be careful, we're going in. Yes. And just as Danzo entered this huge cave, the scene in front of him made his pupils shrink. Because the cave was empty at this moment, Danzo even rubbed his eyes a little unbelievingly. Where is my big tree? And just then, a voice sounded. Ninja Art 4 Violet Flames Formation, more than 10 minutes later. The interior of the 4 Violet Flames Formation was already a scene of devastation, with traces of battle everywhere. Huge trees intertwined with each other, and golden sand floated in the sky. Rasa, in his impure world reincarnation state, stood atop the gold dust, with 2 battered corpses hanging from the trees beneath him. Even at the moment of his death, Danzo's remaining left eye was filled with unwillingness. This included not only the unwillingness of dying so inexplicably, but also the shock of seeing Rasa use wood release. But Rasa only glanced at him and lost interest. I must say, this version of Danzo from this era is perhaps getting old, he's really weak. In his time, eliminating Danzo required extensive planning and taking advantage of the information asymmetry between the two sides to launch a sneak attack to completely defeat him, but this Danzo. He only needed less than 10 minutes to completely take care of him. Perhaps years of pampered living had lowered Danzo's vigilance to an extreme. As soon as Rasa launched a sneak attack, he directly severed Danzo's right arm, snatched the 3-tomo Sharingan from his right eye, didn't even give him a chance to use Izanagi, and finally ended the battle completely with wood release. As for the Yamanaka clan ninja, he was completely devoured in this world of trees like an ant. However, although he had achieved his goal, Rasa still had no intention of leaving. Because he had some things he needed to verify. Although this impure world reincarnation body couldn't use Sage Art Chakra, preventing him from opening the underworld, he still had other options. Summoning Technique. Gate of the Underworld. As the summoning technique was cast, a huge stone gate rose from the ground. Seeing the appearance of this stone gate, Rasa was overjoyed. It succeeded, so, without the slightest hesitation, he stepped inside. The scene before him was still familiar. A huge and empty white world, seemingly larger than before Rasa arrived, but because he couldn't use Sage Art Chakra at this time, he couldn't sense the Sage Art Chakra of this world. Fortunately, it wasn't a problem. He could regain Sage Art chakras soon. However, before that, he still had a question that needed to be answered. This answer was also easy to obtain. In just a few minutes, he arrived at a familiar place. That was the very center of this underworld. Then, Rasa saw the answer at a glance. He saw a Rasa identical to himself sitting there cross-legged. However, this Rasa had his eyes tightly closed, and there was no sign of life around him, as if he were a soulless corpse. At this moment, two Rasas appeared in the entire underworld space. One was the impure world reincarnation Rasa, and the other was the Sage Art Chakra Rasa. Seeing this scene, Rasa completely understood. It seems that impure world reincarnation only summoned my soul to the future. For some reason, Rasa had some guesses. In other words, because I replaced the original fourth Kazekage Rasa of this world, I became a unique existence in spacetime. Orochimaru wanted to summon the original fourth Kazekage's soul through impure world reincarnation, but it had already disappeared, replaced by the current me. So, that's why I was summoned to the future? Interesting. Rasa thought of another thing. That was that in the future storyline, this fourth Kazekage would be summoned twice more. Once during the Fourth Shinobi World War, summoned by Kabuto, and the other time at the end, summoned by the Sage of Six Paths and the other past Kage. He just didn't know if the change in the plot would lead to the absence of that future, or if another parallel world would appear as it does now. Rasa leaned more towards the second possibility. The answer was also very simple. He looked at the open black lens bracket Karma close black lens bracket in his hand. Of the four corners of the black rhombus, two corners still had no changes. However, that was a matter for the future. Now, he should return to his body first. Thinking of this, Rasa directly cancelled the impure world reincarnation on his body. Then, Rasa felt his soul fly out of his body. This was the first time he had seen the appearance of his soul. It wasn't the appearance of his previous life, but the current fourth Kazekage Rasa. It seemed that his original soul had perfectly merged with the fourth Kazekage Rasa. But just then, suddenly, a terrifying feeling struck, causing Rasa's expression to change drastically. It was a feeling like a summoning technique, coming from the outside world, and his body uncontrollably wanted to fly out. Fortunately, the underworld space surged with a force that isolated this power from the outside. But Rasa still didn't dare to hesitate and immediately flew into his original body. Then, without the slightest hesitation, he stretched out his right hand and absorbed the chakra of the impure world reincarnation from this space. Only after he confirmed that there wasn't a trace of chakra in the underworld did he take a deep breath and say, "This powerful force, is it the Sage of Six Paths?" The depths of this shinobi world. In a world that only souls can reach, known as the Pure Land. A low voice slowly sounded. That power, is it Mother, and the power of spacetime? Looking around, it was an old man floating cross-legged in midair, with black orbs flying beneath him, wearing a white robe, with coffee-colored hair, two horns, 6 black tomo on his chest, and a red vortex symbol on his back. This man was the founder of Ninshu, Hagoromo Otsutsuki, also known as the Sage of Six Paths. In fact, from the moment Rasa came to this world, he had noticed something was wrong. Because as the founder who spread chakra throughout this world, the souls of all the shinobi in this world were firmly controlled by Hagoromo Otsutsuki through chakra as a medium. And in order to deal with his mother, Kagaya Otsutsuki, he mentioned the enemies that would definitely come to this world, the Otsutsuki clan. He brought the souls of all the deceased shinobi to his own Pure Land, with the aim of cultivating them into a force to resist the Otsutsuki clan. And among these shinobi, the Kage, as the pinnacle of shinobi, were naturally his most concerned. But after Orochimaru used impure world reincarnation to summon the fourth Kazekage Rasa, Hagoromo Otsutsuki discovered that this soul, which had just been summoned away from the Pure Land, suddenly lost control. So, with the help of this chakra, Hagoromo Otsutsuki had been paying attention to this soul that had lost control. From the moment the other party escaped the control of impure world reincarnation, to absorbing the chakra of Indra's reincarnation, Hashirama Senju, to entering that unique space, Hagoromo Otsutsuki had been watching. He naturally also saw the peculiar rhombus mark on the palm of Rasa's right hand. Although born as a member of the Otsutsuki clan from Earth, Hagoromo Otsutsuki was unaware of the existence of the open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket, but that didn't prevent him from sensing the power within it that was very similar to his mother, Kaguya. This sudden and bizarre turn of events left Hagoromo Otsutsuki somewhat puzzled. Of course, he knew about the black hand his mother had left in this world, Black Zetsu. In fact, he had tacitly approved of many of Black Zetsu's actions. The reason was simple: to cultivate ninja powerful enough to resist the Otsutsuki clan. Black Zetsu was writing the script for the development of this ninja world, but wasn't Hagoromo Otsutsuki doing the same? In fact, Hagoromo Otsutsuki was hiding even deeper. This was also why he couldn't personally intervene when facing this peculiar soul. He could only act within the rules. Faced with this soul that should have died, the only power he could currently use was Pure Land Summoning, restricting the souls of dead ninjas to the Pure Land. However, Hagoromo Otsutsuki discovered that something within Rasa's soul was constantly hindering him. It was as if a long nail was pinning Rasa's soul to his body. Fortunately, the moment Rasa came into contact with Impure World Reincarnation, the separation of his soul gave Hagoromo Otsutsuki an opportunity. But when he continued to use Pure Land Summoning, preparing to summon this strange soul, another peculiar force appeared. That peculiar space surged with the force of spacetime, once again preventing him. Then, he saw the other party absorb all the chakra, and he could no longer sense the other party's existence. What exactly happened? Could it be another contingency left by Mother, one that even I don't know about? However, although Hagoromo Otsutsuki was filled with doubts at this moment, he still decided to do nothing for the time being and continue to observe, because compared to the script he had written, Rasa's appearance was just a small interlude. He wouldn't let this small interlude affect the development process of the entire ninja world. Unless Rasa did something that even he couldn't tolerate. In the Yellow Springs world, after returning to his body and absorbing all the remaining chakra from the Impure World Reincarnation, Rasa recalled the terrifying power that had almost grabbed him away just now, and he felt a lingering fear. At this moment, he could be sure that only the Sage of Six Paths possessed such power in this world. Rasa really didn't expect that the first time he, a transmigrator, came into contact with the Sage of Six Paths, it wouldn't be the Sage of Six Paths from his original timeline, but the Sage of Six Paths from the future. However, this also indirectly confirmed one thing. That was, the White Snake Sage was right. The spatial power of Ryuchi Cave combined with the spatial power of the Mount Demon world could indeed block the Sage of Six Paths. This meant that he had another trump card when facing the Sage of Six Paths in the future. At least, he could hide in this world if he couldn't win. After slowly letting out a breath, Rasa began to think about what to do next. First of all, after returning to his body, he confirmed one thing. That was that he could freely travel between these two timelines from now on, and even bring other people between the two timelines. He could use the Yellow Springs world as a transit station. Needless to say about the original timeline, he could enter and exit at will, and in this future timeline, he could use the Gate of the Yellow Springs as a portal between the future timeline and the Yellow Springs world, achieving the purpose of entering and exiting at will. Secondly, the existence of the Yellow Springs world allowed him to play both sides and tentatively attack the tailed beasts. Of course, he couldn't go too far. Fortunately, Rasa didn't want to kill the tailed beasts. He just needed some of their chakra to condense into chakra fruits and integrate them into his world. When he collected the chakra of all 9 tailed beasts, perhaps he wouldn't have to fear the Sage of Six Paths. Finally, the existence of 2 timelines and 2 sand villages also gave him different ideas. Especially since the 4th Kazekage of this timeline had already disappeared, leaving only him as the sole Kazekage. Although both sand villages were equally weak in the current timeline, they could create the strongest sand village across multiple timelines by complementing each other. Thinking of this, Rasa became slightly excited, but for now? Rasa looked at the empty world in front of him, took out a scroll, and opened it. A light purple chakra fruit appeared in front of him. This was the new chakra fruit he had condensed by absorbing the chakra from Hashirama's body. As long as he planted this chakra fruit in the Yellow Springs world and sealed it with the gourd, he would have an inexhaustible source of sage chakra. As Rasa formed hand seals, the sage chakra in the air turned into a large amount of sand. Under Rasa's control, the chakra fruit slowly floated up and landed in the sand. Instantly, countless roots spread out from the chakra fruit, deeply piercing into the sand. The chakra fruit also grew upwards, extending a straight trunk, and the trunk was covered with branches and leaves. Before long, a green divine tree as thick as two people could hug appeared in this empty world, adding a touch of green to this monotonous world. And at the moment when this divine tree appeared, Rasa clearly felt that the concentration of sage chakra in this world had directly doubled, and it was still increasing. At the same time, in addition to the power of spacetime, there was a trace of a peculiar power in the entire world, which was life. Boom! In the land of fire, more than 30 kilometers away from the Hidden Leaf village. Accompanied by a deafening explosion, the smoke dissipated after the huge impact. The figure of a giant monster appeared in the sight of all the Sand Village and Hidden Leaf ninjas who were fighting. At this moment, Maki's face was unsightly, while Temari and Kankuro were trembling and pale. Damn it, has it still lost control? Finally appeared. Monster. The Hidden Leaf ninjas who were besieging the Sand Village ninjas also changed their expressions greatly at this moment. Kakashi took off his Sharingan mask and carefully observed the giant monster, saying with cold sweat flowing down his forehead. Has it still appeared? Hey, Kakashi, is that a tailed beast? Kai quickly came to Kakashi's side, protecting Sasuke, Naruto, and the others. Kakashi nodded with an unsightly expression. It's also my first time seeing one. The Sand Village's tailed beast. One-tailed Shukaku. Even the two Jonin were terrified at this moment, let alone the children who were seeing such a giant monster for the first time. At this moment, their pupils shrank sharply, and their bodies were trembling. Sasuke was very familiar with this look. It was the look in Gaara's eyes when he fought Gaara. I see, so this guy has such a monster inside him? After being frightened, Naruto showed a trace of sympathy in his eyes. He covered his stomach and said, "That's the monster. Hidden in his body. The same as me." Shino Aburame, who had secretly followed, also said in a low voice, "What a terrifying monster. I feel like the bugs in my body are trembling with fear." Just then, three figures landed beside Kakashi and the others. Leading the way was Shikamaru's teacher, the son of the Hokage, Asuma Sarutobi. The other two were Shibi Aburame, who had come to chase after his son, and Hayate Gecko, who had notified the village and chased after them to make up for his mistakes. Looking at the giant monster that had appeared, the expressions of the three of them were not very good either. Asuma scratched his head and said, "Shukaku, headache. I knew I shouldn't have chased after them. Now it's troublesome, Kakashi." Kakashi's face sank. It's too late to say anything now. Prepare to fight. Be careful, that's a tailed beast. Logically speaking, the ninjas of the Sand Village should have been able to shake off the pursuing Leaf Village ninjas. Firstly, the Sand Village ninjas didn't suffer too much damage because the retreat order came in time. Secondly, the main attention of the Leaf Village ninjas was still focused on Orochimaru and the ninjas of the Sound Village. However, Gaara, this unstable factor, still caused the Sand Village ninjas to be pursued by Konoha. The reason is also very simple. After hearing the name of Uchiha Sasuke, Gaara, who was already in a state of confusion, lost control and entered the state of a possessed body, that is, a half-tailed beast, half-human state. He launched an attack on Uchiha Sasuke, who was secretly following them. Maki also immediately realized that the situation was not right, but it was too late to stop it. Because Gaara, who had entered this state, was beyond the control of Maki, his teacher. Of course, with the number of Sand Village ninjas at this time, it was still possible to get rid of Uchiha Sasuke and continue to flee. But at this moment, one of the Konoha 12 appeared. Shino Aburame, although he was still just a child, as one of the strongest of the Konoha 12 at this stage, Shino Abarame's insects still caused a lot of trouble for the Sand Village ninjas, and with the cooperation of Uchiha Sasuke, they still bought some time. As for why Shino appeared here, although Shino doesn't seem to have a high presence, he is still very proud in his heart. In the Chunin exam, Kankuro, Shino's opponent, chose to automatically abstain. This has always bothered Shino, so, after discovering Sasuke's departure, he immediately left the insects on Sasuke, and then he followed at the end. However, he didn't expect to encounter such a scene. Two children had to face so many Sand Village ninjas. Fortunately, the Sand Village ninjas were a little careless when facing the two children. After delaying for a while, when they were about to die, Shino's father's insects appeared. Of course, it wasn't that the Sand Village was underestimating the enemy, but that they didn't dare to attack Sasuke and Shino. Maki is not a fool. Although he was puzzled by the sudden retreat order issued by Lord Kazekage, he also knew that the Konoha Crush plan had failed, and the strange state of Lord Kazekage made Maki have a bad premonition, so he did not dare to provoke Konoha too much. And with the appearance of Shino's father's insects, Kakashi, Guy, Naruto and the others also chased after them. Then, a great battle appeared. Sand Village Ninjas vs Leaf Village Jonin. Sand Village's Temari, Kankuro, Gaara vs Leaf Village's Shikamaru, Shino, Sasuke, Naruto, Sakura. It's not that Kakashi and the others are crazy to let Naruto and these children deal with a Jinchuriki like Gaara, but Gaara, who has entered the possessed body, has fallen into madness, and the only thing he thinks about is killing Uchiha Sasuke to prove his worth. Moreover, even with Asuma and Hayate Gecko who came later, there are only 5 Jonin from Konoha here. But the opposing Sand Village has hundreds of ninjas. Kakashi and the others were also busy dealing with these Sand Village ninjas. Fortunately, the performance of Sasuke and Naruto surprised Kakashi and the others. Sasuke's Chidori, together with Naruto's multiple shadow clone technique, actually suppressed Gaara in the possessed body state. Then, there is the scene now. The increasingly crazy Gaara finally went completely berserk and entered the complete body. Roar, to thank you for allowing me to fully enjoy the fun, I will let you see the true power of the Sand Avatar. On top of the huge Shukaku's head, Gaara's upper body slowly emerged, making a sound that made Naruto and Sasuke feel cold. Sasuke's eyes were directly distracted, and Naruto's body was also shaking. Fortunately, Kakashi stood up at this time, stood in front of them and said, "Okay, Sasuke, Naruto, you did a good job just now, but the next battle is not something you can participate in." This is a matter of course, and Sasuke couldn't help but take half a step back. But Naruto took a step forward and said, "Kakashi-sensei, What's wrong, Naruto?" Naruto's strange state made Kakashi a little strange, but then he seemed to understand something and said comfortingly, "Don't worry, Naruto, next, you take care of yourselves, we are going up." Kakashi. What is that? Guy's anxious voice also sounded, looking solemnly at the direction of Shukaku. Kakashi looked over and saw Gaara on top of Shukaku's head, directly falling into a sleeping dream. Kakashi was shocked. He didn't understand what was going on. The Sand Village ninjas not far away had already given him the answer. Damn it! Gaara actually launched the Tanuki sleep technique. Shukaku is about to wake up. Everyone, retreat quickly. The Sand Village ninjas immediately ignored the battle with the Leaf Village ninjas and retreated, because they knew how amazing the destructive power of Shukaku in this state was. At this moment, the huge Shukaku let out a somewhat sharp cry. Great, I'm finally out. The sound was so loud that Sakura covered her ears in horror. Is this the real Shukaku? And the awakened Shukaku immediately discovered the ninjas around him. He didn't care about the Sand Village ninjas or the Leaf Village ninjas, and immediately roared. Great, as soon as I came out, I found the humans I wanted to kill. In an instant, Shukaku patted his stomach. Wind release, drilling air bullet. Crap! The dazzling white light filled everyone's vision at this moment. Earth release. Multiple Earth-style wall, boom. The huge roar and explosion resounded in the ears of all the ninjas. Fortunately, a huge earth wall rose up, protecting everyone in it, but the terrible airflow in their ears still made Sakura scream in horror. Just like that, after a minute, the explosion stopped, and Naruto, who was protected by Kakashi and the others, also opened his eyes. Then, they saw a scene that made their eyes go blank. Kakashi-sensei's Earth-style wall had been destroyed to the point where only a little bit was left to protect them, and around them, the world that was originally a forest had now turned into a huge wasteland. The huge destructive power of the tailed beast ninjutsu directly turned everything within a 5-kilometer radius in front of Shukaku into ruins. Asuma also frowned. That's an exaggeration. Is this the power of the tailed beast? If I were hit by that, I would be dead for sure. This kind of destructive move cannot be resisted by human power at all. Kakashi, what do we do now? Asuma asked, but as soon as the words fell, everyone noticed Kakashi's strangeness. Kakashi was panting weakly, and the exposed Sharingan explained the reason for Kakashi's weakness. Sorry, I used too much chakra. At this moment, Naruto suddenly stood up, looking firmly at the distant huge Shukaku, with his hands forming a seal. Kakashi-sensei, leave this monster to me. Everyone was surprised and stunned. Although Naruto's performance just now did exceed everyone's expectations, that is a tailed beast. Even they, these Jonin, are helpless. Sakura immediately shouted in dissatisfaction. Idiot, Naruto, what time is it? You are still showing off. Only Sasuke looked at Naruto's firm eyes, his eyes shocked. Since the two became teammates, the power shown by Naruto, the dead last, has shocked Sasuke again and again. Could it be? I'm not kidding. At this moment, Naruto formed a seal with his hands, exuding an aura that convinced people. And Kakashi saw Naruto's hand seal and suddenly thought of something, his pupils shrank sharply. Could it be that technique? And Naruto had already completed the hand seal at this time? I'll use the technique that Jiraiya-sensei taught me. Summoning technique. The moment Gaara activated the false sleep technique. The Sand Village ninjas, already somewhat familiar with this scene and deeply terrified, began to flee in all directions. At this moment, they had no way of regarding the huge monster before them as a ninja from their own village. It was just a monster that didn't distinguish between friend and foe, only knowing destruction. The truth was indeed so. After the huge explosion, Temari, as the older sister, and Kankuro, as the older brother, looked at the destroyed forest and the terrifying monster, their minds filled with fear, and they couldn't help but recall the events of 6 years ago. 6 years ago, Gaara went berserk and killed their uncle, Yashimaru. It was also that time that the two first saw the complete form of this monster. From that time on, the two could no longer associate Gaara with their cute little brother, but rather a monster representing fear, slaughter, and bloodshed. Maki-sensei, what do we do now? If father isn't here, no one can control Gaara. Temari looked anxiously, but found that Maki, their teacher, had a face full of excitement at this time. Don't worry, Temari, this may be a good thing, a good thing. Maki looked at the huge Shukaku as if he was a little crazy and said, that's right, using Shukaku's power to eliminate these Konoha ninjas, the Uchiha clan's orphan, copy ninja Kakashi, and these outstanding young people, is definitely beneficial to our sand village. When the Kazekage-sama arrives, he will be able to control Gaara. Temari couldn't hear anything at this time, because she found that Maki, as a teacher, was so crazy at this time that she felt a little scary. And when she looked towards her younger brother Kankuro, she found that Kankuro looked scared. This reminded her that in the battle not long ago, the outstanding performance of those Konoha ninjas who were about the same age as them, especially the cooperation of the two named Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, made Temari suddenly feel a sense of inferiority. Just then, she suddenly heard a burst of angry scolding. Looking around, it was actually that group of Konoha ninjas. The guy named Naruto Uzumaki seemed to have done something stupid, so the surrounding Konoha ninjas all looked like they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The pink-haired girl was hitting Naruto Uzumaki's head, and Naruto Uzumaki was holding a small toad in his hand, also shouting something. Why? This made Temari even more unable to understand. In such a dangerous situation, the Konoha ninjas were still so relaxed and joking. While feeling strange, for some reason, Temari was a little envious. However, she also thought too much, because Shukaku's huge body had already moved. Just then, a voice rang out in the sky. Summoning technique overwhelming the stalls technique. Idiot, idiot, idiot. Amidst the anticipation of the crowd, Naruto Uzumaki lived up to his title as the #1 unpredictable ninja, using the summoning technique to summon a palm-sized toad. Gamakichi. Why? Naruto hugged his head, his whole person going crazy. The surrounding Konoha ninjas, including Sasuke, were all sweating coldly. Especially Sasuke, with a speechless look. He was still looking forward to Naruto. Just then, suddenly the earth shook and the mountains swayed, and the Konoha ninjas looked at the huge monster attacking, their faces becoming serious again. It's not the time to joke, guy, Shibi, let's go together. Kakashi struggled to stand up. It wasn't that the other Konoha ninjas were useless, but that in the face of such a huge-tailed beast, Hayate Gecko's swordsmanship and Asuma's ninjutsu were difficult to work. Only Guy's 8 gates released taijutsu, Shibi's insects, and the Sharingan could be effective. Instantly, the three stood in front of Naruto and Sasuke. But just as the three were about to take action, a voice rang out in the sky. Summoning technique overwhelming the stalls technique. This time, the three who heard who the owner of this voice was all breathed a sigh of relief. Naruto also jumped up excitedly. Boom! Along with a huge shadow falling from the sky, the completely transformed Shukaku was immediately crushed to the ground, splashing sand waves more than 10 meters high. On Shukaku's huge body, a huge blue-green toad with 2 swords on its back came into everyone's eyes. And on the top of the toad's head, a man with white hair and the word "oil" on his forehead appeared in everyone's sight, posing coolly, and said his identity. Mount Myoboku Toad Sage Immortal Hermit, known as the Toad Sage, has come to pay his respects. Unfortunately, the coolness only lasted 3 seconds. Pervert Sage. Naruto Uzumaki's voice rang out. Jiraiya, on the top of Gamabunta's head, immediately frowned into the shape of a well, and roared angrily in Naruto's direction. Baka, Baka, I told you not to call me that name. Looking at this bickering pair of master and disciple, everyone on the battlefield, whether it was the Sand Village ninjas or the Konoha ninjas, had a few drops of cold sweat on their foreheads, but the Konoha ninjas were embarrassed, but the Sand Village ninjas were really terrified. Hey, this man? Are you kidding me? Could it be one of them? One of the legendary Sannin, Toad Sage Jiraiya. No way, didn't they say that this man had already left Konoha? At this moment, fear filled the hearts of the Sand Village ninjas, and even Maki, as the head of the Anbu, felt despair for the first time when facing this man. This stunned Temari, who was on the side. Maki-sensei, is this guy very powerful? Ah, this man may be even more powerful than the Kazekage-sama. What, in Temari's heart, Rasa, as her father, was already the strongest, but now, Maki-sensei told her that this man was even more powerful than her father. Just then, a roar came from the earth. Damn it, who is it? Oh, you woke up so quickly? Jiraiya immediately jumped away with Gamabunta, and Shukaku's crushed body reunited once again, looking at the huge toad in front of him with anger in his eyes. Damn it, unforgivable, to actually make this lord me. As soon as the voice fell, dark purple chakra gathered at his mouth. This is. Kakashi's face was full of horror, and Sasuke's body was also trembling. Because both of them had seen the huge chakra in that chakra ball through the Sharingan. Asuma, Hayate Gecko, and Shibi also had shocked expressions. As witnesses of the 9-tailed demon fox attack, how could the three not know the destructive power of the tailed beast ball? Not to mention the Sand Village ninjas, they also knew of the existence of the tailed beast ball. After all, Shukaku had gone berserk in the village many times. On the other hand, although Jiraiya's face was also relatively solemn, his face was still full, his hands formed seals, and he was about to use the swamp of the underworld technique to destroy the launch of the tailed beast ball. But suddenly, his pupils shrank, and the hands forming seals also stopped, looking at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Shukaku, at this moment, was also looking at the familiar figure that appeared in front of his tailed beast ball with his huge lantern-like eyes, his pupils shrinking. Impossible. My chakra. At this moment, everyone on the battlefield saw the man who suddenly appeared beside Shukaku's tailed beast ball, reaching out his right hand and completely absorbing the chakra in the tailed beast ball. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Dad, in an instant, Temari recognized the man who appeared next to Shukaku's tailed beast ball. The other Sand Village ninjas also reacted and immediately became excited. The fear of Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, appearing, instantly dissipated. Great! It's Lord Kazekage, but only Maki felt very wrong at this moment. Because he found that the Kazekage's state had changed again, no longer the appearance of a lifeless dead person he had encountered not long ago, but had become a normal person, but, strangely, he couldn't feel the Kazekage's chakra, and, was it an illusion? Lord Kazekage seems to have become younger. Maki had been following the Kazekage for more than 10 years, so his understanding of the Kazekage surpassed anyone else in this world. It was precisely because of this that he could keenly perceive the difference in the Kazekage in front of him at this moment. How should I put it? The young appearance of the Kazekage in front of him reminded Maki of when the Kazekage had just taken office more than 10 years ago, and, if he was not mistaken, the Kazekage was now absorbing Shukaku's chakra. He never knew that the Kazekage actually had such an ability. So, what exactly is going on? However, although he was full of doubts in his heart, he could not show it at this moment. Because if the man in front of him was not the Kazekage, then where did Lord Kazekage go? The current Sand Village cannot afford to lose a cage. Rasa at this time had no intention of paying attention to the ninjas of the Sand Village and Konoha below. All of his attention at this time was on Shukaku's chakra. Now that he has come to this world, as a transmigrator from another dimension, he doesn't need to tiptoe around anymore, and Gaara's condition is much better than Bunpuku's. If he doesn't take this opportunity to obtain Shukaku's chakra, when will he wait? The Sand Village ninjas and Konoha ninjas below, as well as Jiraiya, were also somewhat unaware of the situation in front of them. So, they didn't make any extra moves, and just watched Rasa absorb Shukaku's chakra. However, wanting to condense a chakra fruit, just the chakra of a tailed beast ball is obviously not enough. Damn it, you're actually absorbing my chakra. Seeing his tailed beast ball being absorbed by the familiar figure in front of him, the fourth Kazekage of the Sand Village, Shukaku was extremely furious, but just as he was about to resist, 4 stone pillars suddenly appeared from the ground around him, rising from the ground, and countless curse seals spread out from these stone pillars, completely binding Shukaku's body. Dragon Vein Seal. Damn it, this scene surprised everyone around. What kind of sealing formula is this? Even Jiraiya, with his vast knowledge, had never heard of this sealing formula. And Rasa had already absorbed all the chakra of the tailed beast ball, and descended from the sky, landing on top of Shukaku's head. Shukaku looked at Rasa above his head with hateful eyes. Rasa did not directly wake up his future son, but directly seized the opportunity to press the open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket on his right hand onto Shukaku's head. Instantly, an even larger amount of Shukaku's chakra poured out from Gaara's seal, gathering on Rasa's right hand. After an unknown amount of time, a deep purple chakra fruit slowly appeared on Rasa's right hand. At this moment, everyone present was stunned. Even Jiraiya was surprised to see the chakra fruit floating next to Rasa's right hand, dumbfounded, not understanding what was going on. Only Black Zetsu, who had received the news and rushed over from not far away, saw this scene and his pupils shrank sharply. How is it possible? This is the power of the Otsutsuki clan. That's Mom's open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket. What exactly is going on? Black Zetsu was completely dumbfounded. Wasn't Mom sealed by those 2 bastards, Hagoromo and Hamura? Why did Mom's open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket appear on the 4th Kazekage's body? Black Zetsu couldn't understand at all. The sudden variable made Black Zetsu's entire brain a bit of a mess. And as Shukaku's massive chakra was absorbed by Rasa, Gaara's complete body was also completely released. Shukaku's huge body turned into sand and disappeared, leaving only Gaara's thin body, lying in Rasa's arms, slowly waking up. The first moment Gaara opened his eyes, he saw the blurred figure of his father, Rasa. His eyes were full of confusion. Was he dreaming? Dad. Just as he was about to ask, he heard gentle words he had never heard before in his ear. Have a good sleep. When you wake up from a sleep, everything will be all right. Gaara was indeed a little tired. The fatigue at this moment made him unable to resist closing his eyes again. Looking at this cheap son in his arms, who was also a character that Rasa liked very much in the manga, Rasa also sighed. It can be said that Gaara is Naruto without the protagonist's halo. Temari, Kankuro. Hearing their father's call, Temari and Kankuro immediately ran over. The two looked at Rasa in front of them with some fear and restraint. Seeing this, Rasa was also a little speechless. He could only say that Rasa in the original plot really didn't die unjustly, turning a good family into this, and being so cruel to his son. Take care of your brother. Temari and Kankuro were both shocked, because they had never heard this title from their father's mouth. In their father's eyes, Gaara had always been the village's tailed beast weapon. Although they were a little puzzled, they were already a little flustered when they took Gaara from Rasa's hands. Only then did Rasa look at Maki, who was not far away, looking at him with guarded eyes. Maki. Hearing Rasa's call, Maki's body trembled, but after thinking about it, he immediately appeared in front of Rasa and said, kneeling on one knee. Lord Kazekage, are all the Sand Village ninjas who participated in this operation here? Yes. Maki immediately nodded in agreement. Well, in that case, let's go. After saying that, Rasa glanced at the Konoha ninjas in front of him, focusing on Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto, and then turned around to leave. But just then, Jiraiya's voice slowly sounded behind Rasa. Oh, the Kazekage of the Sand Village, are you just going to walk away like this after your Sand Village and the Sound Village jointly destroyed Konoha? Rasa stopped and turned to look at the acquaintance on top of the giant toad's head and asked. Oh, one of the legendary Sannin, the toad sage Jiraiya, do you want to keep me in Konoha as a guest? But unfortunately, I have no interest at all, but, if you want to try a few moves, I am very interested. Jiraiya was first startled, and then his face was full of smiles. Oh, it seems that you are very confident, Kazekage of the Sand Village. If that's the case, then let me, Mount Myoboku Toad Spirit Sage Jiraiya-sama. See how much you weigh, Kakashi. You take Naruto and the others to retreat first. The following battle is not something you can participate in. HMPH, Rasa also snorted lightly and became interested. Maki, take all the Sand Village ninjas back 10 miles. Yes. Instantly, the battle that should have been the juniors as the protagonists immediately turned into a battlefield for the adults. Why did Jiraiya have to start a fight with Rasa here? The reason is simple: intelligence. Before coming, he had learned some things that had happened in the village from the Anbu, including Orochimaru using impure world reincarnation to resurrect the first Hokage, the second Hokage, and the fourth Kazekage. However, this fourth Kazekage who was reincarnated suddenly undid the impure world reincarnation technique himself, breaking free from Orochimaru's control. Although Jiraiya wasn't a ninja like Orochimaru who liked to study forbidden techniques, he still understood what the impure world reincarnation technique was. It was a forbidden technique that could revive the dead. This also meant that this fourth Kazekage should actually be a dead person. Putting aside how he managed to escape the control of the impure world reincarnation technique, just look at the appearance of this fourth Kazekage in front of us. There's no sign of him being dead at all. Moreover, there's also the ability to absorb chakra just now, and that chakra aggregate that looks like a fruit. What exactly is that? Jiraiya had too many questions at this moment. If he let the opponent return to Sanagakure, it might be difficult to get answers to these questions. Therefore, Jiraiya would naturally not let go of this good opportunity. Moreover, Jiraiya was very confident in his own strength. As for why Rasa agreed, it was purely because he wanted to see Jiraiya's power. Because after Orochimaru's hands were sealed and the third Hokage died, Jiraiya was undoubtedly one of the strongest ninjas of this era. Under the orders of Rasa and Jiraiya, the ninjas on both sides retreated without hesitation. It wasn't until they had retreated 10 miles that Kakashi said without even turning his head, Sasuke, Naruto, You two need to watch the upcoming battle carefully. This will be a battle representing the highest level of strength in the ninja world, the level of Hokage. Sasuke and Naruto were stunned, and then their expressions became serious. One wanted to kill his brother to avenge his clan, and the other wanted to become Hokage and gain everyone's recognition. Sakura clearly felt at this moment that she was starting to drift further and further away from these two companions. Asuma patted Shikamaru on the shoulder. The encouragement in his eyes was self-evident. As for Shino, the precocious him didn't need his father's prompting and was already paying attention to the battle. On the other side, Kankuro was carrying his younger brother, Gaara, on his back with some fear. Temari was standing aside with a worried expression, and Maki had a furrowed brow. Silence was synonymous with the Sanagakure side. Perhaps this is why the protagonist can become the protagonist, while the supporting characters will only be supporting characters. However, everything will change in the future. Huff. A gentle breeze blew across the sky above the entire forest. Rasa, standing on the sand gold cloud, and Jiraiya, standing on the head of Gamabunta, faced each other. Since he wanted to search for intelligence, Jiraiya naturally took the lead in speaking. Speaking of which, I fought many powerful Sanagakure ninjas. I've also experienced the third Kazecage's iron sand technique. I just don't know which is stronger, the fourth Kazecage's gold dust technique or the iron sand technique. The first thing Jiraiya wanted to confirm was whether the other party was the fourth Kazekage of Sanagakure. Ninjas can easily disguise themselves, but techniques are difficult to imitate, especially the magnet release of Sanagakure, such a special Kekkei Genkei. Kumogakure also has magnet release, but Kumogakure's magnet release is a nature transformation of wind and lightning attributes, while Sanagakure's magnet release is a nature transformation of wind and earth attributes. This leads to the difference between the two magnet releases. One focuses on magnetism, and the other focuses on controlling metal. Rasa also knew what Jiraiya was thinking, and he said with interest, "Is that so? In that case, let this toad sage witness it." As soon as he finished speaking, Rasa put his hands together. Sage art. Magnet release. Quicksand waterfall. Boom. Instantly, the entire forest began to tremble. Even the Konoha and Sanagakure ninjas who had retreated 10 kilometers away felt the trembling like a natural disaster. The ground began to crack, and cracks appeared. Before they could react to what was happening, the world suddenly changed color, and countless yellow sands mixed with gold dust surged out from the middle like a monstrous wave, devouring Jiraiya from afar. At this moment, the Konoha rookies all had dilated pupils. Although their worldview of the power of this world had already been washed away once when they saw the complete Shukaku, this time, the power displayed by Rasa casually refreshed their understanding once again. You must know that the complete Shukaku just now was only about 50 meters tall, but at this moment, the sand wave covering the sky was already close to 100 meters. Unlike the fear of the Konoha ninjas, the Sanagakure ninjas were already excited. So powerful. Is this the power of the Kazekage-sama? This kind of power is the power of a god. Long live Kazekage-sama. Even Temari and Kankuro, who were Rasa's children, were gaping, looking at the sky covering gold sand in disbelief. Only Maki's expression was still solemn. Being able to use the gold dust technique confirmed that it was Kazekage-sama, but as Maki, who grew up following Rasa, could confirm that Kazekage-sama's power was not this strong. At this time, Kakashi, who was observing everything with his Sharingan, suddenly shouted in shock. "How is that possible? What's wrong, Kakashi?" Guy was startled. Kakashi's expression was serious, and the three tomo in his left eye quickly rotated. "Chakra? I can't even see this Kazekage's chakra? What?" Under Kakashi's reminder, Sasuke, who had also activated his two tomo Sharingan, also looked towards the golden sand in the sky. Sure enough, he couldn't see a trace of chakra in the golden sand. What exactly is going on? As Rasa's opponent, Jiraiya naturally sensed it at this moment. Looking at the sky-covering sand wave, Jiraiya frowned and said to Gamabunta under him. "Bunta, you felt it too, right?" "Yeah, Jiraiya-sama, but it's strange, it's not chakra, nor is it natural energy. Is this the key to the opponent's resurrection? Never mind. Let's stop this move first, use a combination ninjutsu. Yeah. Jiraiya instantly formed hand seals. Ninja art, toad oil flame bullet. Instantly, monstrous flames spewed out from Jiraiya's mouth, and Gamabunta also spewed out Mount Myoboku's unique toad oil. The toad oil containing natural energy combined with fire release directly erupted into a tsunami-like flame, with the momentum of devouring everything, dyeing the entire sky red. Even though they were more than 10 miles away, both the Konoha ninjas and the Sanagakure ninjas felt the scorching flames. So powerful. At this moment, Naruto was stunned. Although he had long known that the pervy sage was very powerful, he had never had a clear understanding of how powerful the pervy sage was. But at this moment, looking at the flames that seemed to be burning the entire sky, Naruto finally understood, and then he became completely excited. Next to Naruto, Sasuke Uchiha had an ugly expression. Because he knew that Jiraiya was Naruto's teacher, with such a teacher to guide him, Naruto would probably surpass him soon. He was so unwilling. However, the battle would not stop because of the exclamations of these little protagonists. The golden sand and the red flames collided fiercely at this moment. The scorching flames and golden sand dyed the entire sky half red and half gold. Even from a distance, everyone present could feel the intense heat. It could be said that this battle was constantly refreshing Sasuke Uchiha's understanding of the world. Before this, Sasuke always believed that the Uchiha clan's fire release was the strongest, but at this moment, gazing at the flames that seemed to have set the sky ablaze, Sasuke's pride as a member of the Uchiha clan was once again trampled into the ground. His fire release, which he was so proud of, was simply like the light of a firefly compared to the brilliance of the moon in the face of Jiraiya's fire release, and the gold dust release controlled by the Kazekage of the Sand Village was also like Iruka's sand control, one in the sky and one on the ground. Is this the strength of a cage? The confrontation between flames and gold dust continued at this moment. Visibly, in the face of the scorching flames, the gold dust controlled by Rasa was instantly melted, losing its control. This was enough to prove the temperature of the flames and the power of Jiraiya's fire release ninjutsu. But Jiraiya didn't dare to relax at all. Instead, his brow furrowed, because only as a combatant could he observe that only the front part of the opponent's gold dust had been melted by his flames. As a metal, gold dust didn't conduct heat very well. Not to mention the range of the opponent's gold dust was so large. Just then, a giant gold dust spinning top suddenly flew out from the flame like a volcano, spinning rapidly and heading straight for Jiraiya. Using rotation to create a vacuum zone around it that flames can't reach? Interesting. Ninja art. Lion's mane technique. Jiraiya's head of silver-white hair instantly grew rapidly, turning into countless white tentacles that grabbed towards the golden gold dust spinning top. Before long, it was entangled in the entire gold dust spinning top. As the hair tightened, it made a harsh friction sound, and the gold dust spinning top was actually forced to stop rotating by Jiraiya's hair. At this time, Jiraiya had already prepared another ninjutsu. A bright chakra ball appeared in his right hand, emitting a huge amount of chakra. His whole body leapt up and came in front of the gold dust spinning top, pressing the chakra ball onto the gold dust spinning top. Instantly, the seemingly indestructible gold dust spinning top suddenly became extremely fragile in front of this chakra ball. Like ice meeting a fireball. The chakra ball destroyed on the surface of the gold dust spinning top and merged into the gold dust spinning top. Jiraiya quickly retreated, and then a violent explosion sounded. Boom! Suddenly, the golden gold dust turned into a sky full of golden rain. So amazing. Kakashi-sensei, what kind of ninjutsu is that? Naruto's eyes widened when he saw this ninjutsu. Kakashi was stunned, looked at Naruto, and then said with a nostalgic look. This technique is called Rasengan, a ninjutsu created by the hero who saved Konoha, the fourth Hokage. The point is, this ninjutsu is a seal-less ninjutsu. Sasuke was shocked, but Naruto had already jumped up excitedly. So amazing, I'm going to ask Pervy Sage to teach me this ninjutsu. A trace of jealousy rose in Sasuke's heart, because he understood that if Naruto really learned this ninjutsu, then Naruto might really surpass him. Damn it! This time Sasuke finally saw how powerful the ninjas in the outside world were, but he was still here playing house with Naruto and the others. Sasuke clenched his fists tightly, and the two Tomo Sharingan in his eyes rotated. He must carefully watch this battle to understand how far he was from these real powerhouses. But at this moment, he found that his Sharingan could not find Jiraiya's trace. Sasuke also instantly understood. Did he just use the smoke and light to hide himself? But where did he hide? He could actually evade the Sharingan's perception. At this time, with Jiraiya's disappearance, the flames that had lost the support of chakra were also quickly extinguished by the gold dust, and the entire forest had turned into a golden desert. But not only was there no trace of Jiraiya, but even Gamahiro's figure had disappeared. However, Jiraiya's method of hiding could hide from the Sharingan's perception, but it could not hide from Rasa, who now possessed super perception. This feeling, is it a barrier technique? Gold dust shuriken? Instantly, countless gold dust shuriken flew out from under Rasa's feet, heading towards a giant tree not far away that was half buried underground. And among the leaves of this tree, where was a red toad hiding? How is that possible? Jiraiya, who was hiding here through the barrier, toad prison, was also shocked. This was the unique barrier technique of Mount Myoboku, and it was impossible to be detected at all. How did the other party discover it? However, this question was not the time to find the answer. The red toad quickly jumped out from between the branches and leaves to avoid it. At the same time, the red toad's mouth also quickly opened, and Jiraiya's figure channel came out from inside. While condensing the Rinnegan in his hand, he attacked Rasa. The red toad also came from another direction in two ways, spitting out a long tongue, trying to restrain Rasa's body. And above Rasa's head, a huge shadow was falling at this time. It was the disappeared Gamahiro, holding two swords, descending from the sky. Rasa, standing on the gold dust cloud in the sky, instantly faced a situation of being sandwiched by an upper and lower triangle. Dad! Temari in the distance was also shocked when she saw this scene. However, Rasa didn't even move. For Jiraiya's mighty attack, he just put his hands together. Sage Art Boundary Release, Magnet Release, Gold Dust World Method. Instantly, Jiraiya only felt the gold dust under his feet begin to wriggle violently, and the gold dust turned into gushing springs, extending countless sharp thorns, densely covering Rasa's left and right. The red toad's tongue was directly cut off. Gamahiro also made the fastest reaction when he saw the barrier like a needle forest below. Directly cancel the summoning contract and return to Mount Myoboku. Otherwise, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. As for Jiraiya, he also quickly cancelled the Rinnegan and formed hand seals. Earth Release. Earth Flow Wall. Using the rising earth wall to block the attacking gold dust for him, his figure began to retreat rapidly. Before long, seeing the earth flow wall that had been pierced with countless holes, Jiraiya's expression was also serious. Super strong perception ability and the perfect combination of magnet release offense and defense. It's really impeccable. That is to say, it's impossible to fight at a distance and thrust, but if it's close combat, the opponent also has the ability to absorb chakra, which means that if you want to test the opponent's depth, you can only use taijutsu or sage art. At this moment, the same as Jiraiya, the Konoha ninjas were also thinking. As expected of the Kazekage, he's really difficult to deal with. Shikamaru, if it were you, what would you do? Shikamaru rolled his eyes at his teacher Asuma, but after thinking about it, he still said, if it were me, I would choose to transfer the battlefield, such as a place close to a river or the sea. Otherwise, this ability is too shameless. Hearing Shikamaru's words, everyone looked at Shikamaru with appreciation, as expected of Shikaku's child. But at this moment, Sasuke suddenly asked in a low voice. Sensei, between the two of them, who is stronger and who is weaker compared to that man? Sasuke's words surprised everyone present, especially the adults. Of course, they knew who the man Sasuke was talking about. Naruto, who had experienced the Land of Waves incident and knew what had happened to Sasuke, also stared blankly at Sasuke. Kakashi's expression darkened, and after thinking for a moment, he explained. A ninja's power is mainly divided into ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu, and in addition to that, there's chakra. Lord Jiraiya and the Kazekage have reached the pinnacle of what a ninja can achieve in terms of ninjutsu, taijutsu, and chakra. As for genjutsu, although I've heard that Lord Jiraiya isn't very good at it, at this level, ordinary genjutsu can't do anything to them. Speaking of this, Kakashi saw Sasuke's clenched fist and continued. Of course, the power of the Sharingan cannot be understood with common sense, so who is stronger and who is weaker cannot be explained clearly here in just a few words. What about chakra control and hand seals? Sakura suddenly asked, because this might be the only specialty she could use to catch up with Sasuke and Naruto. Kakashi had praised her for it before. Asuma answered Sakura. He looked at the two people in the distance and said, at the level of Lord Jiraiya and the Kazekage, these two are just their basic abilities. Asuma suddenly spoke, also to make his lazy disciple Shikamaru recognize this world. Basic abilities. Sakura was stunned. Yes. Asuma patted Shikamaru on the shoulder and said, looking into the distance. You should have seen the battle between these two adults just now. What did you guys notice? What? Team 3 were all stunned. Only Shikamaru seemed to understand something and said, Lord Jiraiya and the Kazekage didn't seem to use hand seals, or their seals were very simple. The Jonin present all looked at Shikamaru with admiration. That's right, that's what I'm talking about. At the level of Lord Jiraiya and the Kazekage, chakra control and the speed of hand seals are just basic skills. But this doesn't mean that these two abilities aren't important, on the contrary. These two abilities are the foundation for reaching this level. So, you can't be so lazy anymore, Shikamaru. Shikamaru's expression stiffened. I know, what a pain. Just then, Jiraiya, who had decided on the next battle strategy, also began his attack. This time, he directly abandoned ninjutsu and began to use taijutsu to test the waters. Whoosh! As a non-Kekkei Genkai ninja, Jiraiya was ridiculously strong in taijutsu. Jiraiya's figure turned into an afterimage, quickly moving towards Rasa above the forest covered in gold dust. So fast, at this moment, Sasuke discovered that even if he activated his Sharingan, he couldn't keep up with his movements. Even Rock Lee, who had opened the 8 gates, couldn't keep up with this speed. Guy, as a taijutsu ninja, became excited. As expected of Lord Jiraiya, his taijutsu skills are truly powerful. Facing the rain like gold dust shuriken and gold dust world method, his figure was incredibly agile, completely dodging them, and soon approached Rasa. Rasa's eyes lit up, although compared to Jiraiya in his era, this Jiraiya was obviously much older, but he was even stronger in taijutsu. Rasa didn't intend to control the gold dust to fight, and was also interested in competing with Jiraiya in taijutsu. Jiraiya's eyes lit up immediately. Because Jiraiya was also very confident in his taijutsu, that was the power trained under Tsunade's monstrous strength. In addition, he was certain of one thing. The 4th Kazekage of Sanagakure was definitely not that good at taijutsu. This judgment came from his intelligence on one hand, and Rasa's Kekkei Genkai magnet release on the other hand. A person's energy is limited. Sanagakure's magnet release was obviously not the kind of Kekkei Genkai that worked with taijutsu. Not to mention, Rasa was more than 10 years younger in terms of age. However, at the moment when the two sides' fists touched, Jiraiya realized that he was very wrong. Bang! Powerful force came from Rasa's fist. Although not as exaggerated as Tsunade's monstrous strength, it still made Jiraiya feel incredible. How is it possible? This young man's taijutsu is actually so strong. Rasa was of course not a taijutsu ninja, and he was indeed not good at taijutsu before. The former Rasa was more like a mage using magnet release. But after obtaining the 8 gates formation technique, everything changed. Now Rasa has reached the point of opening the 5 gates through cultivation. This is not the kind of 5 gates state that bursts out in an instant, but the normal 5 gates. What's the difference? Simply put, Rasa's overall physical state has adapted to the normal 5 gates state, which means that as long as he explodes with all his strength, he can gain power beyond the 5 gates. Boom! Just like now, Jiraiya's momentary stunnedness allowed Rasa to seize the opportunity, bursting out with speed beyond the 5 gates, kicking towards Jiraiya's chest. Although Jiraiya's reaction speed was already very fast, placing his hands in front of his chest to block, his whole person was still like a kite with a broken string. After hitting an unknown number of trees, leaving a deep gully on the earth, he slowly stopped. Perverted sage. Lord Jiraiya. How is it possible? Naruto and the others shouted anxiously. This scene was definitely beyond everyone's expectations. Is this Kazekage actually so strong? It would be fine if he could suppress Jiraiya in ninjutsu, but he was actually so strong in taijutsu. As the smoke dissipated, Jiraiya's somewhat embarrassed figure also appeared in front of everyone. Fortunately, Jiraiya looked to be in good condition, only the clothes on his body were a little tattered. This was thanks to Jiraiya's powerful physique, trained under Tsunade's monstrous strength. However, Jiraiya's eyes at this moment were more serious than ever. Although the total combat time between the two sides has only been more than 10 minutes so far, Jiraiya has already felt a tricky situation. Ninjutsu, taijutsu, and that strange power that doesn't resemble chakra. Now Jiraiya seems to have to go all out. Even open sage mode, it seems that he can test the true depths of the other party. But, is it really necessary to do that? That would lead to a full-scale war between Tsunagakure and Konoha. Now, the old man is probably in mortal danger, and Konoha is in a state of disrepair after Orochimaru's destruction. If a war breaks out, I'm afraid. Thinking of this, Jiraiya also felt a sense of powerlessness. Just as Jiraiya was struggling to make a decision, Rasa had already lost interest, because he had already felt that the current Jiraiya was no longer his opponent. Even if the other party opened Sage mode, Rasa would definitely not be afraid. Don't forget, the current Rasa has only used the gold dust number, and countless other trump cards have not been used yet. Moreover, although the positions are different, his love for the character Jiraiya also makes it impossible for him to kill him. So, he also directly opened his mouth. Let's stop here, shall we? Rasa's words surprised everyone. This Konoha crush plan, in the end, was planned by your Konoha's rogue ninja Orochimaru, and it can be regarded as your Konoha's own family affair. Our Tsunagakure village is not interested in participating in it, so let's end everything here. Of course, if your Konoha disagrees, our Tsunagakure village doesn't mind continuing to fight. Maki, take everyone away. One day later, in the Rain Country, the rain-hidden village was filled with steel and concrete buildings. The sky was rarely clear. Even the sunlight shone through some dark clouds. On the rooftop of a tall building, a young man wearing a black cloak with red clouds and orange hair sat there, the warm sunlight shining on him, taking in the entire rain-hidden village below. Just like that, an unknown amount of time passed. Footsteps came from behind him, and a woman with blue hair, also wearing a black cloak with red clouds, walked over. The young man didn't turn his head and asked, "Nan, is everyone here yet?" Yes. Not long after, in a dark, dripping cave, accompanied by the sound of dripping water, one after another, shadowy figures appeared. Everyone's here. This is the first time in years since Orochimaru left the organization. That bastard Orochimaru, I'll get rid of him sooner or later. Hey, what's going on, Pain? You're delaying my money-making, unforgivable. Seeing that everyone had finally arrived, Pain, who had been silent with his eyes closed, finally opened his eyes and slowly said, "The reason the Akatsuki organization has gathered this time is because there is something that everyone must know." "Oh, what is it? Could it be that the plan is finally about to begin?" Pain did not answer, but instead said to Zetsu, who was beside him, "Zetsu, tell us the information you just obtained." Zetsu, like a lantern plant, looked at everyone and slowly said, "Just yesterday, on the last day of the Konoha Chunin exams, Orochimaru launched the Konoha Crush plan and joined forces with the Sand-Hidden Village to attack Konoha." Oh, Zetsu's words immediately attracted everyone's attention. A shadowy figure with shark-like teeth immediately said to his companion with a pair of scarlet eyes, "Itachi-senpai, you're from Konoha, right?" Another small shadowy figure asked. What was the result? The whole process was very interesting. The Sand-Hidden Village, which was supposed to be allied with Orochimaru, suddenly chose to retreat. However, Konoha's third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, died at the hands of his own disciple, And Orochimaru's hands were sealed. Sealed hands? Yes, according to the information, Hiruzen Sarutobi used a sealing technique called Reaper Death Seal to seal Orochimaru's hands. This means that Orochimaru will no longer be able to use ninjutsu. The small figure's eyes lit up immediately. Interesting, in that case, we will soon be able to recover that ring from Orochimaru. No, there's no rush to recover the ring. Pain's voice rang out coldly. Zetsu, continue? What do you mean? Is there something even more interesting? A shadowy figure with green eyes asked. Ah, it was Zetsu who spoke, and his tone seemed a little excited. In the battle between Orochimaru and Konoha's third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, he used the forbidden technique. Impure world reincarnation, resurrecting Konoha's first Hokage, second Hokage, and the sand-hidden village's fourth Kazekage. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. I see, Orochimaru actually has such means? In that case, we really can't easily attack Orochimaru. Oh, is Kakuzu-senpai afraid? The green-eyed shadow snorted coldly, not at all ashamed of being timid, and said, HMPH, those of you who have not experienced that era do not understand what the name Hashirama Senju represents. That is a monster. No. A god. Who can pacify the entire ninja world with his own power alone. Even if all of us join forces, we will not be his opponent. Hey, you're exaggerating too much, Kakuzu-senpai. No. Not at all exaggerated. Now everyone in the entire cave was silent. Everyone here had no doubts about Kakuzu's strength. Even Kakuzu was so afraid. How terrifying was that god of Shinobi? Even Pain, who had always proclaimed himself a god, did not say much at this moment, but coldly continued. Continue? Oh, isn't the interesting stuff over yet? Yes, the really interesting stuff has just begun, and that is that the fourth Kazekage, who was killed by Orochimaru and resurrected with impure world reincarnation, suddenly broke free from Orochimaru's control, and then, he used some unknown means to completely resurrect, and fought with one of the Konoha Sannin, Jiraiya. Really resurrected? What do you mean? The small shadow figure immediately made a somewhat surprised sound. It's just what it says on the tin. The so-called impure world reincarnation is a ninjutsu that summons the souls of the dead from the Pure Land, which means that those who are reincarnated by impure world reincarnation must be dead. But the fourth Kazekage who fought Jiraiya, we have completely confirmed that he is truly resurrected, not a puppet controlled by impure world reincarnation. What? Hey, really resurrected? You're not kidding, right? Is this kind of thing really possible? At this time, Pain, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Sasori, you are from the Sand-Hidden Village. Does your Sand-Hidden Village have a forbidden technique to resurrect the dead? The small shadow figure rolled his eyes at Pain. No, at least, there is no such technique that I know of. At this time, everyone also understood. So, is this why you're in such a hurry to gather us, leader? Yes. Speaking of this, Pain directly issued an order. Sasori, you are from the Sand-Hidden Village. Next you and Nan will go to the Sand-Hidden Village to investigate what is going on with this Kazekage who has come back to life. Zetsu, you are responsible for supporting them. No problem, I'm also very interested in this kind of ability to come back to life. Then, next, Itachi, you and Kisame will go to Konoha to collect information about Konoha, focusing on the nine-tailed Jinchuriki. By the way, you can go and see your brother. I heard that Orochimaru is very interested in his eyes. After the death of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, there will definitely be huge changes in Konoha. Maybe the other major ninja villages will be eyeing this opportunity to launch an attack on Konoha. As for the others, continue to act according to the plan. Okay, that's all I have to say, the meeting is over. At this moment, Sand-Hidden Village. Rasa sat in his position as Kazekage, looking at some of the materials about this world that Maki had sent up, and found some interesting things. That is, he found that although this world is indeed the future world of his own world, it is not completely the same. Because he originally thought that since this is a parallel world where there is no past him, then he seems to be able to reacquire the power of the dragon veins and the Moryu. But when he asked Maki to send up the relevant information, he found that there was no legend of Roran in this world. and there was no priestess or demon Moryu in the land of demons. Not only that, but looking closely, Rasa discovered the true difference in this world. To be precise, this is a world that only has the main storyline of Naruto, without those movie versions and original characters. For example, Rasa did not find Mukade from the list of ninjas in the sand-hidden village of this era. This made Rasa's idea fall through. However, this does not prevent Rasa from planning for the future. Just then, there was a knock on the door outside, and Rasa opened his mouth without even raising his head. "Come in." Accompanied by the opening of the Kazecage's office door, a group of people walked in. The leader could be considered Rasa's old acquaintances, Chiyo and Ebizo from this future world, both of whom were looking at Rasa with vigilance and inquiry. Behind the two elders were two unfamiliar men, whose identities were also simple, the leaders of the aristocratic and commoner factions of Sanagakure in this era, and also the two elders of Sanagakure now. As for Mikawa and Yokura, according to the information just seen, the original Rasa of this future timeline, in order to secure his position as Kazekage, not only betrayed Yokura to Kirigakure, but also resolved the Mikawa faction. He's ruthless enough. Behind these two men was Maki, the head of the Anbu, and beside Maki were Rasa's children, Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara. It must be said that the recovery ability of a Jinchuriki is truly amazing. In just one day, Gaara was already able to get out of bed and walk on his own. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the Kazekage sitting in front of them with strange expressions. Although the person seemed to be the same, he was too young. Moreover, the information obtained from Konoha made everyone in Sanagakure feel strange. Seeing this, Rasa put down the scroll in his hand and said to everyone, "Sit down." The four elders took their seats, while Maki, Temari, and the others stood aside. Rasa didn't waste time, and he didn't want to waste time here either. "Then I'll make it short. I think you've already received some information. I am indeed dead." Instantly, everyone in the entire office had their pupils constricted, even Gaara was shocked, and Temari anxiously shouted, "Dad! Father!" Of course, Rasa wouldn't tell the truth. He wouldn't tell the six-path sage of this world about his origins. He had already thought of the following explanation. 4 days ago, on the way to Konoha, I went to see Orochimaru. I didn't expect that this guy would suddenly attack me. Understanding the cause and effect, everyone was shocked and angry at the same time, shouting, "That damn Orochimaru! Revenge! We must avenge Lord Kazekage. Konoha must pay the price." Only Elder Chiyo calmly asked. "Then Lord Kazekage, what is your current state?" This question immediately attracted everyone's attention. Orochimaru resurrected me using the impure world reincarnation in order to deal with his teacher. Impure world reincarnation. Is that the forbidden technique invented by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju? Chiyo and Ebizo were both people who had fought against the second Hokage, so they naturally knew about the impure world reincarnation technique. The two new elders and Maki, Temari, and others, hearing the two elders say this, immediately confirmed that the Kazekage seemed to be really dead. Temari couldn't accept it for a moment, and her face became painful. "Yes, but fortunately, I happen to know the method to release the impure world reincarnation, and because of a special secret technique, I can now be said to be truly resurrected for a short time." Truly resurrected. A short time. Now the people in the room were surprised again. "Yes, I'm not sure how long this state of mind can last. Therefore, the only purpose for Maki to call you here this time is to choose a new Kazekage while I am still alive and able to stabilize the foundation of Sanagakure." Just when everyone thought the surprise had ended, Rasa's next words shocked everyone even more. "And I have already decided on the candidate for the 5th Kazekage, and that is Gaara." At this moment, a gasp of cold air sounded throughout the office. Gaara's pupils shrank suddenly, while Temari and Kankuro looked at their father and younger brother in disbelief. Chiyo and Ebizo frowned and remained silent. Maki fell into deep thought, because for him, this was indeed a good choice. As the Kazekage's confidant and Gaara's teacher, it would be the best choice if Gaara could become the Kazekage. However, there was a huge obstacle in this. The two new elders immediately stood up and roared, "I disagree, Lord Kazekage. Not to mention that Gaara is only a genin now. His identity alone makes it impossible for him to become the Kazekage. Yes, that's right. A Jinchuriki becoming the Kazekage is unprecedented in the history of our Sanagakure. Moreover, Gaara is too unstable. Who knows when he will lose control? I disagree with entrusting the village to such a bomb that could explode at any time. Now, the entire office was filled with tension. HMPH. Rasa just snorted softly and slowly opened his mouth. I think you've misunderstood one thing. I'm not asking for your consent, but notifying you. Chiyo and Ibizo's pupils shrank, because they both felt Rasa's killing intent at this moment, but the two new elders still shouted. No. Kazekage, the election of the new Kazekage is not up to you. It must be approved by our elders' council. Yes, not to mention that you are just a dead person now, even when you were alive. You couldn't be so arbitrary. HMPH. Is that so? Then I can only apologize. What? Stab. Two golden sand spears directly pierced the hearts of the two elders. The huge force pinned them to the wall, and bright red blood flowed down the golden spears. They struggled to say something. At this moment, everyone in the office had their pupils constricted. Even the two elders stood up in shock and looked at Rasa in horror, because Rasa's speed was too fast, so fast that even they didn't react. This meant that if Rasa wanted to kill them, it would also be a matter of moments. Maki, Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara all looked panicked and horrified. Rasa, however, seemed to have only done an insignificant thing and said, Maki, handle the aftermath. Also, have the Anbu keep an eye on things. In extraordinary times, do extraordinary things. If anyone wants to cause trouble during this time, arrest them all for me. Maki was also extremely nervous at this moment, looking at the bodies of the two elders still hanging on the wall, and said tremblingly, I understand, Lord Kazekage. Only then did Rasa nod and look at Chiyo and Ebizo. And at the moment when Rasa looked at them, Chiyo and Ebizo immediately became highly vigilant. Chiyo said with a gloomy face, What, is the fourth also going to attack us two old guys? Of course Rasa wouldn't. Although these two were old, they were definitely at the level of a cage. If they died again, then Sanagakure would really have no one to use. Moreover, it was impossible for him to attack the two of them. No, I want to use a piece of information to exchange for the two of you to come out of retirement and support Gaara to become the fifth Kazekage. Both of them were stunned. Chiyo asked with an unkind expression. What information? Of course, it's the information about your most beloved grandson and the murderer who killed the third, Sasori. In this future timeline, the death of the third Kazekage was still an unsolved mystery. Therefore, at this moment, hearing this answer from Rasa's mouth, everyone present was stunned, followed by a look of horror. However, Chiyo of both eras was the same, and had long expected this answer. Of course, if you are willing, I can also go and capture Sasori now and bring him to you, so that you can reunite with your grandson. The office suddenly quieted down, and Chiyo looked at Rasa with a grave expression. The two stared at each other like that, and after a long time, Chiyo slowly withdrew her vigilant gaze and asked coldly, Where is that child, Sasori, now? Seeing this, Rasa knew that Chiyo had made a choice. No matter which world, Sasori was Chiyo's weak spot. Sasori has now joined an organization called Akatsuki. Orochimaru is also in that organization, and he even modified himself and the corpse of the third Kazekage into human puppets. At this moment, even Maki was too shocked to speak, and could only stare at the two elders and the Kazekage-sama with his mouth wide open. I promise, I will help Gaara become the fifth Kazekage. Seeing this, Ebizo couldn't say anything either. However, he still didn't hide his worries and said, Kazekage, if a Jinchuriki wants to become Kazekage, the instability of Shukaku within him is a big problem. Gaara went from being surprised at the beginning to having an icy expression now. Letting him become Kazekage was indeed beyond Gaara's expectations, but he didn't think it was his father's love for him, but just another way of using him. I will solve Gaara's problem. Then, next, I will leave the other matters to the two elders. Maki, you are responsible for leading the Anbu to assist the two elders. Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara, stay behind. Yes, Seeing this, Chio, Ebizo, and Maki all had complicated expressions and slowly prepared to leave. Maki also thoughtfully disposed of the bodies of the two elders. After the three left, the entire office was left with only Rasa's family. Rasa looked at his three adopted children, Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara. The three of them were also looking at their father, with expressions of doubt, sadness, and coldness. Alright, you should have heard what I just said. Temari, Kankuro, as Gaara's older sister and brother, you must fully support him after Gaara becomes Kazekage. Kankuro was a little at a loss for a moment, looking at his younger brother with some fear in his eyes. Temari hesitated and said, Dad, don't worry, the Shukaku inside Gaara's body has absorbed a lot of my chakra. In addition, I have also strengthened his seal. Next, even if Gaara uses the Tanuki sleep technique, it will not easily run out. Hearing Rasa's words, Kankuro breathed a sigh of relief, while Temari looked at her younger brother with a complicated expression. Gaara still had a cold expression, but he never dared to say anything rebellious to his father. Seeing this, Rasa also knew that because of him, the current Gaara didn't have the great battle with Naruto, so he hadn't resolved his inner knot. If Rasa's identity wasn't the Kazekage, he would of course be happy to see Naruto and Gaara become good friends, but with his current identity, he couldn't let the future Kazekage become a fanboy of the Hokage. Fortunately, Rasa also has a way to untie Gaara's knot. As long as, just as Rasa was about to say something, a presence that surprised him came from his perception. Interesting, I didn't expect you to take the initiative to come to my door. You guys stay here and don't move, I'll be right back. As soon as he finished speaking, Rasa's figure disappeared from the spot, leaving the three siblings looking at each other. Sanagakure. Although they were from other villages, Sasori and Conan still entered Sanagakure as if they were entering an uninhabited place. Looking at the existence covered by yellow sand in front of him, Sasori under the puppet made a low voice and said, How boring, 20 years have passed, and Sanagakure hasn't changed at all. Conan, who was walking beside him, slowly said, I didn't expect that you have been away from Sanagakure for so long, and you still arranged spies in Sanagakure. Just some precautionary measures, Sasori said noncommittally. Conan didn't want to dwell on this issue, and directly asked, Zetsu, can you sense the location of that Kazekage? Above the lowest behind the two, a green Zetsu slowly rose. As the Zetsu opened, revealing Zetsu's figure, his expression seemed to be a little confused and said, It's strange, I can't sense that Kazekage's chakra at all. It seems that the secrets on this Kazekage's body are more than we imagined, and he can even shield Zetsu's perception. It doesn't matter. Sasori's eyes looked at the tallest building in the center of Sanagakure and said, As the Kazekage, he can only go to a few places. As long as you look for it, you should be able to find it. However, be careful not to reveal your whereabouts. Don't worry, Conan said coldly. Collecting information is what I am good at. On the contrary, don't be discovered by acquaintances. As soon as he finished speaking, Conan's figure turned into pieces of paper and flew towards Sanagakure in the distance. Sasori snorted coldly at this, and also shook the puppet's body and slowly walked towards the direction in his memory. Watching the figures of the two leaving, within Zetsu's body, Black Zetsu also occupied White Zetsu's consciousness, looking at Sanagakure in the distance, with a thoughtful expression on his face, and slowly said, What exactly is going on? The ninjutsu that can be resurrected from the state of impure world reincarnation is only the samsara of heavenly life technique, but without the Rinnegan, how did the fourth Kazekage do it? Also, that is indeed Mother's open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket, but since Mother merged with this world, she lost the ability of open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket. Just when Black Zetsu was full of doubts, a voice sounded behind him. Want to know the answer? Just ask me. Black Zetsu's pupils shrank instantly, and his body retreated rapidly, and at the same time turned around. He saw the man he had just been thinking about, who appeared behind him at some point, looking at him with a smile. How is it possible? Actually can. Black Zetsu subconsciously wanted to activate the Mayfly technique to leave here, but Rasa's next sentence stopped him. Don't be afraid, I'm here to cooperate. Black Zetsu was stunned, But he didn't continue to retreat and run away. He looked at the man standing in front of him vigilantly, and asked in a cold tone. "What do you mean?" Rasa's expression was indifferent. "The literal meaning, but, before the next conversation, can you be sure that everything I am saying to you here will not be sensed by Otsutsuki Hagoromo?" Black Zetsu's expression suddenly became a little flustered, because Rasa actually said that name. Could it be? Of course, that Hagoromo guy's perception ability is indeed powerful, but he is not omnipotent. As long as there is no chakra, he cannot sense. What about you? Is it because of Kaguya's power, so Otsutsuki Hagoromo can't find it either? This time, Black Zetsu's round eyes suddenly widened, and then became extremely angry. "You? How do you know? How do you know about Mother's existence? Who the hell are you?" Rasa didn't answer, but just asked. "Now do you think we have the premise for cooperation? The village hidden in the sand." A gust of yellow sand blew past. For who knows how many years, Black Zetsu, who had always felt that the entire ninja world was within his grasp, felt his heart in turmoil for the first time. At that moment, he had considered taking action and completely eliminating the guy in front of him. However, the mysterious aura the other party exuded, as well as the so-called willingness to cooperate, made him suppress his flustered emotions and slowly say, "Cooperation? What kind of cooperation do you want?" Rasa did not answer, but instead said, "You still haven't answered my question from just now?" Black Zetsu's expression was somewhat unsightly, but he still simply replied, "I am a product of Mother's will, a power of the Otsutsuki, not a creation of chakra." "Then what about the other half of your body?" Black Zetsu was now even more certain that the man in front of him really knew a lot. "Those are the white Zetsu that Mother conceived with the chakra of the 10 tails 1,000 years ago. Even Hagoromo couldn't control them." "I see." Hearing this, Rasa also asked the question he was most concerned about. "Do you have a way to completely shield the Sage of Six Paths from sensing our world through the chakra of others? This will be the foundation of our conversation next." Although Black Zetsu's expression was unsightly, he still said, "Heavenly Essence Sealing. This is a sealing technique that can merge the chakra around a ninja's body with the surrounding natural world, thereby shielding Hagoromo's senses." "Very good, give me this technique, and we can continue our conversation." Seeing Rasa's tough attitude, Black Zetsu immediately said with a gloomy expression, "Why? Why do you think I must teach you this technique?" Rasa's answer was simple. "It's very simple, because I understand you very well, but you know nothing about me. In my current state, I can easily prevent the resurrection of Kaguya Otsutsuki. If you don't believe me, I can go to the village hidden in the rain right now and destroy his eyes." Black Zetsu's expression had never been so unsightly, but he was helpless. However, it was impossible for him to compromise so easily. "Do you think you can use this to threaten me? So what if you destroy those eyes? I've waited for nearly 1,000 years. And I can wait for another 1,000 years. Waiting for another Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha to appear. How long can you live?" After listening, Rasa did not refute, but said, "You're right, so I'm not threatening you. I'm just making you realize that I have the capital and conditions to cooperate with you. And to be honest, I don't want to prevent the resurrection of Kaguya Otsutsuki." This made Black Zetsu even more confused. "Do you think I would believe that? Do you also hate this world?" "No. I don't hate this world, on the contrary, I quite like it. As for your mother, as the embodiment of Kaguya Otsutsuki's will, you should know better than me that just resurrecting your mother doesn't require destroying this world. And, to be honest, if I were Kaguya Otsutsuki, I wouldn't destroy this world either." "Why? It's very simple. This is the answer to the question you just asked me. Why do I want to cooperate with you? Because we have a common enemy. The Otsutsuki clan." Visibly, Black Zetsu's pupils trembled, a sign of fear. Kaguya Otsutsuki's fear of the Otsutsuki clan was also transmitted to Black Zetsu, a creation of her will. And to raise the stakes, Rasa said an even more shocking message to Black Zetsu. "As a show of sincerity for our cooperation, I can also give you a bonus piece of information. Ashiki is not dead." At this moment, visible cold sweat dripped from Black Zetsu's forehead. Black Zetsu became somewhat frantic and said, "Impossible. Ashiki has already been fed to the 10 tails by Mother. Don't deceive yourself. You should know better than me that the Ashiki that Kagaya fed to the 10 tails back then was only half of his body. The other half escaped and is now living under another identity, secretly observing this world. If you don't believe me, you can inquire about it. His current identity is a monk named Jigen. However, I suggest you be careful. I'm not sure to what extent he has recovered now. If you are caught and sealed by him, it will be terrible. Seeing Rasa say it so confidently, even Black Zetsu couldn't help but believe it. How is that possible? Rasa continued to raise the stakes, saying. Moreover, you should also know that the time for the chakra fruit to mature as planned has long passed. I'm afraid that before long, the Otsutsuki clan will send people to collect the chakra fruit. Ashiki, plus the others sent by the Otsutsuki clan, do you think that even if your mother Kagaya is resurrected, she will be able to defeat them? To be honest, I would rather believe that your current unfilial son can defeat the Otsutsuki clan than believe that your mother can do it. Although your mother does have great power, she doesn't seem to be very good at fighting. Black Zetsu's expression was unsightly. Although he was unwilling to speak ill of his mother, he had to admit that if that day really came, his mother's fate would probably only be one. And mother and Hagoromo, who sealed her, certainly couldn't cooperate. Then, perhaps the man in front of him was a good choice. Moreover, the power in this man's body was also very peculiar. However, he still said with suspicion, is that so? In that case, why don't you go find Hagoromo to cooperate with? It's very simple, I'm not a person who likes to be dependent on others, whether the other party is righteous or evil. And your mother Kagaya Otsutsuki, or that sage of 6 paths Hagoromo Otsutsuki, are both terrifying tigers to me. If I have to cooperate, I can only choose the weaker side. After all, your mother is currently sealed, so even if she has any bad ideas about me, she has to wait until she is freed from the seal. These were indeed impeccable words, but it was unlikely that Black Zetsu would agree so easily. I need to consider it, Black Zetsu said, and his figure slowly merged into the ground. No problem, as long as you've thought it through. You can come to the village hidden in the sand to find me. Don't worry, as long as you appear in the village hidden in the sand, I will be able to sense you. Oh, right, that sealing technique from just now. A scroll was spat out by Black Zetsu, and then Black Zetsu's figure completely disappeared. Rasa picked it up and his eyes lit up. His ultimate goal could be considered achieved. As for whether Black Zetsu would tamper with this sealing formula, he was not worried at all. Because as long as this technique could indeed shield the Sage of 6 Paths, that was enough. As for Black Zetsu, even if the Black Zetsu of the 2 worlds were connected through this technique, as long as Kagaya Otsutsuki was sealed on the moon, then Rasa would have nothing to fear. Then, next, he could proceed with the next step of his plan. After simply trying it out, Rasa discovered that this technique could also use Sage Chakra energy. Moreover, it did indeed have the ability to shield chakra. Then, he directly returned to the Kazecage's office, placed seals on his 3 cheap children, and next, he would take them to the world he was in. Suna Village, the Kazecage's residence. As the Kazecage's wife, and with her belly growing larger, Karora began to experience some uncomfortable pregnancy reactions. This was also Karora's first time becoming a mother, and she sometimes felt at a loss about it. But even when she felt uncomfortable, Karora would try her best to endure it, because she didn't want to trouble her husband. Rasa was the Kazekage of the entire village. Although he always appeared confident, Karora could feel the pressure on her husband. In this past year, he hadn't relaxed at all, and had been working diligently for the village. Especially now, with Cloud Village and Rock Village joining forces to attack Suna Village. Fortunately, good news arrived yesterday. Rasa, along with Mikawa and Pakura, had defeated the advance team from Rock Village, captured 2 Jinchuriki from Rock Village, causing Rock Village to be wary and breaking the dangerous stalemate that Suna Village was currently in. This morning, when she went out to buy groceries, she heard the cheers of the village ringing out once again. And all of this was brought about by her husband, Rasa, making Karora feel very proud as his wife. However, in addition to pride, perhaps it was the sensitivity brought on by pregnancy. It caused other thoughts to arise in her heart. She knew she shouldn't have them, but she really wished that the one fighting alongside her husband was herself, and not another woman. Just as Karora was sitting on the sofa, stroking her belly, and feeling ashamed of having such thoughts, a knock sounded on the door. Karora snapped back to reality, and just as she was about to get up to open the door, a very lively voice rang out. "I'll do it, Lady Karora, leave it to me." Then, a lively figure darted out of the bedroom and went to the door. Seeing Hanataba's boisterous appearance, Karora's somewhat chaotic heart calmed down. It had to be said that Karora really liked Hanataba. She even hoped that if the child in her belly was a girl, she would grow up as happily as Hanataba. Just then, Hanataba's happy shout came from the entrance. "It's Lord Rasa." Karora turned her head and saw Rasa, who had changed his clothes and shoes, walking in. Karora immediately happily wanted to get up, but Rasa stopped her. "No need to get up." Rasa came to the sofa, sat beside her, and gently stroked Karora's belly, asking, "How has it been? Has the baby been fussy these past few days?" Feeling her husband's gentleness, the little thoughts in Karora's heart disappeared completely, and she said sweetly, "It's not that fast, the baby is still very small now, it will take a few months to grow up." Hanataba also said, trying to take credit, "Lord Rasa, I've been taking good care of Lady Karora and the little baby in Lady Karora's belly these past few days. Thank you for your hard work." Rasa gently patted Hanataba's head as a reward, and then said to his wife, "Thank you for your hard work too, Karora. As your husband, I can't be by your side." "No." Karora shook her head. "I understand, Rasa-kun. You're the Kazekage, you belong to the entire village. I can't be so selfish." Seeing such a gentle wife, what could Rasa say? He could only hug her in his arms, making Hanataba's little face turn red. It wasn't until Karora felt Hanataba's gaze that she let go with some embarrassment. Rasa also released Karora and said, "Today, besides coming to see you, I also have a gift for you." However, after saying that, Rasa thought for a moment and said somewhat uncertainly, "It should be considered a gift, right? Her husband's attitude made Karora stunned, somewhat puzzled. Rasa also called Hanataba to his side, and then placed a heavenly origin seal on them. Karora and Hanataba both felt their strange state, looking surprised. This seal is called the heavenly origin seal. In this sealed state, it can shield your body's chakra and external perception. How amazing! Hanataba tried it, because she found that she couldn't even sense Karora's presence in front of her. Only Karora's eyes were surprised. Of course, she knew that her husband would not do anything meaningless. Just then, as Rasa waved his hand, a distortion appeared in the room, and a crack appeared in it. Karora also understood that the gift her husband was talking about was in there. But what was it? "Come out!" In Karora's surprised gaze, 3 children walked out of the spatial crack. Their eyes were filled with vigilance, doubt, and surprise as they observed their surroundings. Until their eyes fell on Karora, their pupils shrank, and their gazes seemed to recognize her. This made Karora very surprised. What's going on? Karora hadn't reacted yet. The girl with golden hair who was in the lead had already rushed over with tears in her eyes, throwing herself into Karora's arms and crying. Karora didn't resist, because she knew that with her husband here, she wouldn't be in danger. But what exactly was going on? She could be sure that she didn't know the girl in front of her. Moreover, strangely, not only the girl who had already thrown herself into her arms, but also the boy with paint on his face was also shedding tears. He seemed to want to step forward, but he didn't dare to move forward, while the last boy with the symbol, love, on his forehead and red hair was trembling, staring at her with moist eyes. What exactly was going on? Karora was completely stunned and could only look at her husband for help. Rasa then explained, "These 3 children are called Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara, respectively. They are our children." This time, not only Karora was shocked, but even Hanataba felt that her mind was a little overwhelmed. Fortunately, Rasa also knew that this was indeed difficult to understand, so he pointed to Temari in Karora's arms and said, "If history doesn't deviate, Karora, the child in your belly now is this child, Temari." At this time, Temari slowly raised her head, looking at her mother, who was exactly the same as in her memory, and finally couldn't help but shout, "Mom!" At this point, even if Karora was silly, she seemed to realize something and asked incredulously, "Rasa-kun, Could it be that they are? Yes. The specific reason is complicated to explain. In short, because of some special power, I arrived in Suna village, possibly 13 years in the future, through space-time ninjutsu. I have carefully investigated, although the two worlds are very similar, generally speaking, they are not the same world. At that moment, Rosha's words not only answered Gaara's doubts but also shocked Temari and Kankuro. At the same time, they completely understood why they always felt their father was acting strangely. Is such a thing really possible? Gaara felt incredulous, covering her small mouth with her hands in a surprised manner. Rosha also nodded. I also find it unbelievable, but it did happen. Moreover, how should I put it, that future me doesn't seem to be a qualified father. Upon hearing this, Temari and Kankuro's expressions changed slightly. Gaara, seeing this, especially when she looked at Gaara, feeling the familiar chakra and the terrifying bloody scent on him, seemed to understand something. But no matter what, they are still our children. Therefore, there are some things I cannot ignore. So, I brought them here. It's good to have them by your side to take care of you, so I can rest assured. After Rosha finished speaking, he looked at Temari and Kankuro. Of course, if you don't agree, then forget it, no. Temari immediately shook her head. I want to stay by mom's side. Kankuro also nodded heavily. As for Gaara, although his eyes were also very moist, he still asked a question. So, are you really our father? This question made Temari and Kankuro's expressions become a little strange. Rosha thought for a moment and said, this is indeed a difficult question to answer, but I think sometimes the answer is not important. What's important is what we believe. At least, I was able to bring you here because I consider you my children. Gaara's pupils shrank, and Temari and others' eyes also became bright. Gaara, feeling her husband's feelings, also gently stroked Temari's head. Feeling this familiar tenderness, Temari couldn't help but call out, Mom! Rosha nodded upon seeing this. It seems you already have the answer in your hearts. Then, next, you will live and familiarize yourselves with the sand village in this time and space for a while. It can also be considered as understanding the differences between the two villages. However, during this period, you must hide your identities. Besides that, you cannot use chakra and ninjutsu. Maki, come in. As Rosha ordered, Maki, who was waiting outside, walked in, curiously looking at the trio in front of him. The trio was the same, looking at the Maki-sensei who was more than 10 years younger, with faces full of surprise. These three children are called Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara. Anbu, arrange an identity for them. Maki didn't think much about it. After all, this year, Lord Kazekage has brought back two talented children from the outside ninja world, Hanataba and Hinoka, so it can be considered a precedent. Yes. Well, thank you for your hard work. Go and get busy. Oh right, pass on my order and have Yashimaru return from the front lines. Hearing this name, Temari and Kankuro were shocked again. Seeing Maki retreat, Temari finally couldn't help but ask, is Uncle Yashimaru also alive? This question made Gaara's heart tremble because it meant that in the future time and space, her younger brother had actually died? Fortunately, Rosha's words reassured Gaara. Yes, this is what I said, our two worlds are not connected. Not only Yashimaru, but in our time and space, Ebizo and Mikawa are all living well, and there are some people you don't know, such as the child next to you. Her name is Hanataba, from the Uzumaki clan, is Elder Chiyo's disciple, and there is another child, named Hinoka, also from the Uzumaki clan, is Elder Ebizo's disciple. Uzumaki. Kankuro didn't understand what the Uzumaki clan was, but he was very familiar with the name Uzumaki. Isn't that the same surname as that idiot in Konoha named Naruto? Yes. Rosha nodded. That child named Uzumaki Naruto is the child of Konoha's fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and his wife, Kushina Uzumaki. Like Gaara, he is the current nine-tailed Jinchuriki of Konoha. This answer shocked the three children present. Are you kidding me, Dad? That idiot is actually the child of the fourth Hokage? Temari shouted subconsciously. Kankuro also reacted and said, no wonder that idiot seems to have always cared about Gaara. Gaara's pupils also shrank. But at this moment, a gentle figure slowly came to him and hugged him all of a sudden. The violence in Gaara's heart made him want to resist subconsciously, but a gentle voice and that warm embrace made him freeze instantly. "Thank you for your hard work, Gaara." Completely uncontrollably, a line of tears slowly flowed from Gaara's eyes. He really wanted to prevent himself from being so embarrassed, but he couldn't control it at all, and tears kept flowing down. At this moment, everyone could feel the sadness in the heart of this seemingly cold teenager. Garura also hugged Gaara tightly. From the moment her husband said that Gaara was actually a Jinchuriki, she already understood what her future child would experience. No wonder her husband in that world was not a qualified father. At the same time, the name Gaara also made Garura feel some sadness from herself in that world. Rosha felt that it was a way to make up for some of the regrets in his heart. Rosha didn't want to disturb Garura's use of maternal love to resolve the sadness in Gaara's heart. So, he said to Hanataba, Temari, and Kankuro, "Hanataba, you stay here. Temari, Kankuro, you come with me." In the Yellow Springs world, Temari and Kankuro returned here again under Rosha's leadership. Although they had stayed in this world for a while not long ago, the scenes in front of them still made them feel novel. They saw a huge space in front of them, as if they had arrived in the universe. Countless fist-sized stones floated in it, like stars. In the very center of these dense stars, there was a towering tree standing in the entire space. Rosha brought Temari and Kankuro to the bottom of this divine tree, and under their puzzled gazes, he didn't play dumb riddles and said directly, "There is only one reason I brought you here, and that is as my children, you are too weak now." Temari and Kankuro's expression stiffened, especially in front of Uzumaki Naruto, who possesses the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan and the nine-tailed Jinchuriki, and Uchiha Sasuke, who possesses the bloodline of the Uchiha clan. "I ultimately do not belong to your world, and it is impossible for me to stay in your world for long. Therefore, next, I will bestow upon you a power." Temari and Kankuro were both shocked, especially Kankuro, who was excited, but Temari asked with some concern, "What about Gaara? Gaara's situation is a bit special. Shukaku in his body will hinder this power. Therefore, next, it is time for you as a sister and brother to protect Gaara." The process of Temari and Kankuro gaining new power went smoothly. This not only meant that Rasa's idea was correct, that the divine tree he planted could transform the constitution of people in this world into a constitution that could innately use sage art energy. It also represented that, in this parallel future timeline, he had also driven a nail. As for what kind of role this nail would play, that would depend on what use this future world had for him. However, this process also verified some things. That is, what kind of chakra fruit can be produced and what kind of special abilities can be possessed through the sage art constitution obtained through the divine tree transformation cannot be transferred by Rasa's own will, but rather depends more on the bloodline possessed within the other party's body. For example, the abilities obtained by Temari and Kankuro can be said to be completely the same. That is wind release plus magnet release, no other abilities. Rasa's divine tree in the Yellow Springs world was planted using Hashirama's chakra fruit and Shukaku's chakra. This also allowed Rasa to regain control of the wind release power after a year. Because wind release was originally one of Shukaku's abilities. As for the others, Rasa already possessed them. Rasa originally thought that after Temari and Kankuro injected chakra, the new constitution they obtained would have some of Shukaku's abilities, such as sand control art or magnet release sealing art, but unfortunately, they didn't have any. For example, Rasa's most anticipated sand control art or magnet release sealing art. Unfortunately, they didn't have it. Fortunately, Sage Art Energy's wind release and magnet release are also a huge improvement for the two. As for the fact that there is no Sage Art Energy in the future timeline for the time being, this is indeed a problem. However, 2 years is enough for Rasa to solve this problem. In the following time, Rasa became even busier. Originally, his own world was in a state of ninja world war, and Rasa had a lot of things to deal with all day long. Now that there is another future timeline, Rasa is even busier. Fortunately, everything is worth it. Because the existence of 2 timelines gives Rasa an extra trump card to save his life. He can boldly attack the tailed beasts, which will allow his power to be rapidly improved. When he has the power to completely dance in this world, he can also not be so cautious. In this way, time passed slowly. The two timelines also began to move forward according to their respective histories. First of all, in Rasa's timeline, after Rasa captured the two Jinchuriki of Iwagakure, the stalemate faced by Tsunagakure was indeed broken at once. Whether it was Iwagakure or Kumogakure, they both chose to back down, and the originally tense situation eased down at once. However, it has been several days, but Iwagakure still has not sent anyone to communicate about the redemption of the two Jinchuriki, which makes the situation look a bit strange. In fact, not only Tsunagakure did not understand, but Kumogakure and Konoha also did not understand what Onoki of Iwagakure was thinking. The village's two such precious Jinchuriki were captured, but Iwagakure did not take any action. Little did they know that Onoki was also very troubled at this time. From the moment he learned that Roshi and Han were actually captured by Tsunagakure, he fell into a state of helplessness. Because without even thinking about it, as long as he negotiates with Tsunagakure, Tsunagakure will definitely demand an exorbitant price. But if he doesn't negotiate and uses force to force them, the current Iwagakure is simply unable to do so. It can only be said that Onoki's worries have come true, and Tsunagakure has indeed grown into a fierce tiger. Onoki read the intelligence from the front line word by word. Not to mention Rasa, who is the Kazekage, showing the power of easily suppressing two complete-tailed beasts alone. Rasa's right-hand men, Yekura and Mikawa, also showed a state that can be compared to the complete-tailed beasts. You must know that in the entire Iwagakure, only Onoki himself can do all of this. But now, Tsunagakure has 3 people. This means that in terms of the highest end power, Tsunagakure has already surpassed Iwagakure. I'm afraid that only the current Konoha can fight Tsunagakure. As for Kumogakure, not to mention, only the third Reikage, that old guy, is still okay. His son and the two Jinchuriki in the village have not yet grown up. Perhaps in 10 years, they can fight Tsunagakure, but now. Not to mention, the power that Tsunagakure has shown, which can restrain the tailed beasts, makes the third Reikage even more impossible to let the two Jinchuriki take action. Headache. What should I do now? Onoki really didn't know how to show his goodwill. This is also the reason why he still hasn't made a decision after so many days. However, at this moment, a group of unexpected people appeared, a group of people from Kirigakure. This made Onoki feel very surprised, because since the second Shinobi World War 10 years ago, after Onoki's teacher, the second Tsuchikage of Iwagakure, Mu, and the second Mizukage of Kirigakure, Genjetsu Hazuka, died together, the two villages became sworn enemies. This kind of hatred is even deeper than Iwagakure's hatred for Konoha and Tsunagakure. Logically speaking, Onoki should not meet these Kirigakure ninjas, but at this time, Iwagakure's somewhat difficult situation still made Onoki decide to meet these ninjas from Kirigakure. Then, Onoki received a piece of news that made him frown. That is to say, your Kirigakure was also used by Tsunagakure. Yes. Speaking of this, one of the Kirigakure ninjas, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, Zabuza Momochi, had a face full of anger. The Mizukage-sama also didn't expect that Tsunagakure would actually use our Kirigakure. The Mizukage-sama did want to cooperate with Tsunagakure, but Tsunagakure, while clearly refusing, also used the Mizukage-sama's goodwill. At this time, Onoki could already confirm that Tsunagakure really had no cooperation with Kirigakure. However, it was useless to say anything at this time. So, what is the purpose of your Mizukage calling you here? The Mizukage-sama's meaning is very simple. We have all been used by Tsunagakure. Since this is the case, why can't we become friends? Our request is also very simple. That Uzumaki clan girl from Tsunagakure must be handed over to us? Onoki frowned. What benefits are there for our Iwagakure and your Kirigakure to cooperate? Zabuza Momochi glanced left and right. Onoki immediately understood and made the surrounding people retreat, and even set up a seal. Although our Kirigakure obtained the 3 tails and 6 tails distributed by the first Hokage Hashirama Senju, the Jinchuriki has been failing to be created due to the lack of sealing techniques. Onoki frowned even tighter. Don't say these meaningless words. Zabuza Momochi said the words that made Onoki's pupils shrink without paying any attention. No. Tsuchi Kage-sama. A successful Jinchuriki naturally has its value, because it can become a weapon. But a failed Jinchuriki is not useless, because it can destroy itself and destroy the enemy. Future timeline. Sanagakure. The deaths of the two elders did indeed cause a significant ripple within Sanagakure, but under the control of the Anbu and with Chiyo and Ebizo taking action, it was successfully suppressed. As for the excuse for executing these two elders, it was that they had collaborated with Orochimaru, a rogue ninja from Konoha, with the intention of assassinating the Kazekage. Excuses are sometimes unimportant. In any case, those around them lacked the ability to verify the truth. As Sanagakure gradually calmed down, the final news from Konoha arrived. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was confirmed to have died at the hands of his own student, Orochimaru. Also one of the legendary Sannin, the Senju clan's princess, Tsunade Senju, became the fifth Hokage of Konoha. Immediately upon assuming office, Tsunade sent a letter to Sanagakure, demanding an explanation for the attack on Konoha during the Chunin exams. However, after taking a glance, Rasa threw it aside and said to the visiting Konoha ninja, "Go and tell your new Hokage that if she wants an explanation, she should personally bring Konoha ninjas to our land of wind." The meaning was self-evident. There would be no explanation. All that was wanted was war. After sending away the angry Konoha ninja, Maki asked with some doubt, "Is this really okay, Lord Kazekage?" Well, after spending the last few days together, Rasa also felt it. This future timeline's Maki was more timid than the Maki from his own timeline, especially when facing Konoha. However, it was not his fault. After all, the past of this future timeline did not have his presence. No need to worry. The current Konoha does not have the ability to launch a war against us. Although Maki hesitated, he still nodded. By the way, during this period, I will take Temari, Kankuro, and Gaara to a special place to train. If you want to see them, tell me, and I will bring them back. No, it is naturally best if Lord Kazekage can personally guide Temari and the others. Well, I'll have to trouble you to take care of the village affairs for the time being. Yes, sir. As Maki took his leave, Rasa sensed Black Zetsu's reappearance, and his figure transformed into sand, disappearing from the office. Sanagakure, on a cliff not far from Ichizoku, one-line Strand Gorge. Arriving here, Rasa asked Black Zetsu, who had reappeared with a wary expression. "What? Have you thought about it?" Black Zetsu's voice was hoarse. "Let's talk about how we're going to cooperate first." Hearing this, Rasa already had a certain grasp of this cooperation, and he asked with interest. "Have you found Jigen's, or rather, Ashiki's whereabouts?" Black Zetsu did not speak, but from his solemn expression, one could discern a thing or two. Seeing this, Rasa did not say any more nonsense. "It's very simple. First of all, our common goal is to resist the upcoming Otsutsuki clan and Ashiki Otsutsuki, who is hiding in the dark. Therefore, power is essential, and in order to obtain power, or rather, revive Kaguya, the tailed beasts are indispensable. Then, we have the premise of our cooperation." "You mean you're going to help me capture the tailed beasts? Not to mention whether I need it now, but the Jinchuriki of Shukaku is your son, isn't he?" Black Zetsu said with a sinister tone. "No, of course, I won't help you capture the tailed beasts. You have the Akatsuki organization to use now, and capturing the tailed beasts is not difficult for you. As for the Shukaku inside Gaara, I won't hand it over to you either, but at the same time, I won't stop you. Children and grandchildren have their own fortunes." Black Zetsu looked at Rasa, unable to fathom Rasa's true thoughts. "What a cold-blooded father. Then what do you want to get from me?" "Information on all the tailed beasts. I need the chakra of all the tailed beasts." Black Zetsu's non-existent eyebrows furrowed. Seeing this, Rasa explained. "Don't worry, I only want half of the chakra of these tailed beasts. This is only a small part for these tailed beasts, and they will recover quickly. If you are worried, you can follow me and watch me capture them." Black Zetsu fell into contemplation. After a while, he asked, "What do you need the tailed beast's chakra for? It seems I don't need to explain this question to you, do I?" Black Zetsu did not resent being rejected, but instead looked at Rasa's right hand. Then, can you tell me why you have mother's aura on you? Rasa was stunned, and then, sensing Black Zetsu's gaze, he looked at the open black lens bracket karma closed black lens bracket on his right hand, asking strangely. Are you talking about open black lens bracket karma closed black lens bracket? Don't ask me. In fact, I want to ask you instead. As Kaguya's will, you should understand better than me why Kaguya's open black lens bracket karma closed black lens bracket would appear on me? Black Zetsu's expression was solemn, and after thinking about it, he slowly said. That's also what I find strange. It shouldn't be the case, but if there must be an explanation, then this can only be the possibility. Hey! Rasa rolled his eyes and said, don't you know that I hate riddles the most? HMPH, Black Zetsu snorted coldly before explaining. Mother did abandon open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket, but this does not mean that mother abandoned this ability of immortality, but instead injected her own open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket into the chakra of this world. Chakra? Rasa was also slightly surprised, seeming to understand something. No wonder Kaguya cannot be killed, only sealed. That's right. After mother injected open black lens bracket karma close black lens bracket into the chakra of this world, mother has become one with the chakra of this world. That is to say, any life in this world that uses chakra can become a tool for mother's revival. Rasa suddenly thought of something and said, does this tool include Hagoromo? Of course. Black Zetsu seemed somewhat proud when he said this. Otherwise, why do you think Hagoromo is hiding in the Pure Land, afraid to easily appear in the ninja world? Because as soon as he appears, the chakra in his body will resonate with mother, awakening mother's sleeping will. Rasa frowned and asked. That doesn't seem right. Then why did Hagoromo create Ninshu and cultivate descendants after sealing Kaguya, only to die when he grew old? That's because the chakra in Hagoromo's body was not complete at that time. He only absorbed the chakra of the 10 tails, but without the body of the 10 tails. However, as he cultivated later, the chakra in his body became more and more abundant, and he also sensed mother's consciousness in the chakra. That's why he separated the chakra of the 10 tails and distributed the chakra to everyone, creating Ninshu, because he knew that mother, who was fused with the 10 tails, could not avoid being revived. Even if this world no longer has the divine tree, the power of the 10 tails, hidden in the chakra, will still continuously convert the natural energy of this world into chakra. Therefore, he cultivated his 2 sons, giving them his power, hoping that one day, he could use their hands to reseal mother. At this moment, Rasa felt that he knew many secrets of this world again. At the same time, he also understood why the Sage of 6 Paths in his original world had never attacked him, except for the time when he suddenly came to this world and the Sage of 6 Paths attacked him. First, it is possible that the Sage of 6 Paths really had no way to attack him. Secondly, perhaps the Sage of 6 Paths might be happy to see him convert chakra into Sage Art energy, because this meant that the possibility of Kaguya's revival was also reduced. However, none of this matters anymore. Rasa cannot pin his safety on others. I understand. So, what do you think of our cooperation? Black Zetsu also came back to his senses and stated his request. Yes, but I have one request. What is it? I also need that chakra fruit. Rasa glanced at Black Zetsu and refused without hesitation. Don't dream. You seem to have misunderstood something. Even without you, do you think I have no way to get what I want? The only reason I'm seeking cooperation with you is to make things a little easier. Black Zetsu's expression was slightly unsightly. Then what can I get? My not interfering with your plan is already the greatest help to you. Besides that, before Kaguya is revived, I can help you stop Ashiki. Although Ashiki's appearance is a plot point in the subsequent Boruto storyline and won't happen until more than 10 years later, Black Zetsu doesn't know this. Moreover, Rasa is not sure whether Ashiki will take action ahead of schedule due to the changes in the plot under his influence. Black Zetsu hesitated for a moment, but finally asked, "Are you sure you won't interfere? The threat that Rasa poses to Black Zetsu now is too great. He is second only to Hagoromo. Don't worry, I am very interested in Kaguya's revival." In fact, if your mother can be revived without a world-destroying method, we might even become friends and jointly resist the future Otsutsuki clan. Black Zetsu pondered for a moment, but finally agreed. It's not surprising that Black Zetsu so easily believes Rasa. As Kaguya's will, Black Zetsu's fear of the Otsutsuki clan is also engraved in his heart, especially recently after discovering some clues about Ashiki's whereabouts through investigation. Now that you have agreed, let's not waste any time and start acting. However, before we act, in order to make it easier for me to obtain the tailed beast chakra, I may need to borrow the identity of Akatsuki. Land of the Sea. A certain island shrouded in mist. Terrifying screams often come from this island, causing the surrounding pirates and fishermen to avoid it. In the depths of the island, inside a huge cave, some human buildings are visibly erected. These prison-like buildings are inhabited by monsters that appear human but exude a terrifying aura. The mysterious incantations on their faces and bodies reveal the origin of these monsters. Yes, this is one of Orochimaru's secret research bases, specifically used to study the curse mark. And these monsters are the test subjects. Deep inside the cave, in a room lit by an oil lamp, Orochimaru, who has already completed the impure world reincarnation, slowly unwraps the bandages, looks at the unfamiliar self in the mirror, and lets out a sinister smile. Beside Orochimaru, Kabuto, as his assistant, is kneeling on the ground, his body trembling. Where is Sasuke? It turned out that not long ago, after the plan to have Tsunade heal his arms failed, Orochimaru decided to implement the plan to lure Sasuke over to become his vessel. Orochimaru was originally going to directly take over Orochimaru. Unfortunately, his subordinates were too slow, and his body could no longer wait for Sasuke's arrival. He could only choose a new vessel here to perform the reincarnation. However, immediately after the successful reincarnation, Orochimaru was not very satisfied with this body, because he could feel that the compatibility between this body and himself was too low. But once the impure world reincarnation is performed, there is naturally no turning back, and there is also a 3-year cooldown period. This made him extremely dissatisfied, and he exuded a cold aura, causing Kabuto beside him to tremble all over. Hearing Orochimaru's question, Kabuto hurriedly replied, "Lord Orochimaru, those brats from Konoha are more troublesome than expected. However, Kimimaro has already been dispatched, so there won't be any problems." Hehe. Orochimaru didn't ask any more questions, but changed the subject and asked, "How is the investigation of that Kazekage going?" Hearing this, Kabuto breathed a slight sigh of relief. There seems to be nothing unusual. Not only us, but according to the news from that lord, that organization also sent people, but they found nothing. Interesting, too interesting. Even Akatsuki has noticed him. Kabuto also seemed to think of something at this time and said strangely, "It is indeed very strange, Lord Orochimaru. Although this Kazekage is indeed very strong, it took Lord Orochimaru, me, and Kimimaro to defeat him. But according to the subsequent intelligence of this Kazekage fighting Lord Jiraiya, this Kazekage seems to be much stronger than when he fought us. Moreover, after being resurrected, he didn't even seek revenge on you, Lord Orochimaru. What's going on?" "Oh, what do you think?" Kabuto pushed up the glasses on his nose. "I don't know either. That's what I'm wondering about. Moreover, there is also intelligence from Konoha that Danzo from Root is also dead." This time, a trace of emotion finally appeared on Orochimaru's face. "What's going on? I don't have any information on how he died specifically yet, but during the time when Lord Orochimaru was fighting the third Hokage, Konoha's Root was attacked by this fourth Kazekage. It's as if this Kazekage had planned everything in advance. I even suspect that the person we killed was not the real fourth Kazekage, but the impure world reincarnation technique cannot be faked." Orochimaru's eyes suddenly became gloomy, and everything that was happening in front of him made him feel more and more confused. It is indeed very strange, just as Orochimaru's eyes were full of doubts. Suddenly, a burst of frightened roars came from outside. "What's going on? Is there an intruder?" This startled both Orochimaru and Kabuto. Especially Orochimaru. The reason why he is called a rascal snake is because his summoning animal, snakes, gives him very strong reconnaissance and anti-reconnaissance abilities. But now, the snakes he controls have not sent back any news. Kabuto made a decisive decision. It looks like this place has been discovered, Lord Orochimaru. Your current state is not suitable for fighting. Let's retreat first. Orochimaru is not someone who stubbornly insists on saving face, and he nodded. But just as the two of them passed through the secret passage of the base and came to the outside of the base, preparing to leave the island, a voice rang out behind them. Orochimaru, where are you going? Orochimaru looked back, and his pupils instantly shrank. At the misty shore, both Orochimaru and Kabuto stared intently at the two men before them, their pupils shrinking. Orochimaru, who had once been a member of the Akatsuki organization, was all too familiar with the red cloud and black robe attire. Kabuto was naturally also very aware, after all, both of his masters came from this organization. Just as Orochimaru and Kabuto thought the others had come to settle accounts. Orochimaru keenly noticed something, his entire demeanor becoming somewhat incredulous, then realizing something, he regained his composure, a smile on his face as he said. Interesting, when did the fourth Kazekage of Sanagakure join the Akatsuki? With Orochimaru's reminder, Kabuto suddenly realized that the man wearing a straw hat, obscuring half of his face, was actually the fourth Kazekage of Sanagakure, Rasa, who had died at his and Orochimaru's hands, and was also the focus of their recent discussion. What exactly is going on? The one who appeared before Orochimaru was naturally Rasa, and the other person was Black Zetsu. Rasa, however, was not in the mood to answer Orochimaru's question, simply asking, Orochimaru, do you want to see a wider world? Orochimaru was taken aback, then understanding something, he licked his lips, asking with some excitement. Is it related to your resurrection? You can understand it that way? Rasa's reply was still indifferent. Orochimaru was now completely calm. Oh, so what brings the Kazekage of Sanagakure to me? Rasa didn't speak, directly taking out a set of Akatsuki uniforms from his robe and throwing it to Orochimaru. Under Orochimaru's somewhat surprised gaze, he continued. Next, I want to borrow the Akatsuki identity to capture the tailed beasts and obtain some of their chakra. Although I can do it alone, to save trouble, I need a helper, and no one is more suitable than you, who once joined the Akatsuki. Orochimaru was taken aback, his gaze turning to Zetsu beside Rasa. Orochimaru, who had once been a member of the Akatsuki, of course recognized Zetsu, and therefore, things became very strange. According to Rasa, he was only borrowing the Akatsuki's name, which meant that Rasa was not a true member of the Akatsuki. Then, what was Zetsu's appearance an explanation for? Could it be that Zetsu, as a member of the Akatsuki responsible for intelligence, had also betrayed the Akatsuki? Orochimaru couldn't figure it out, but since he couldn't figure it out, he didn't need to think too much. Interesting, Orochimaru didn't refuse, taking the Akatsuki uniform in his hand, looking at Rasa before him with great interest. I have a question, I wonder if the Kazekage-sama can give me an answer? Ask, heh. May I ask how the Kazekage-sama was resurrected? This question was not unexpected to Rasa, he said half-truthfully. Logically speaking, I have no need to answer this question for you, but now, I can tell you that I got rid of the control of the Sage of the Six Paths through a special method, and then resurrected with a special technique. At this moment, Orochimaru's eyes flashed with excitement, while Kabuto beside him trembled all over. 6. Sage of the Six Paths, isn't that a legendary mythical figure? Does the Sage of the Six Paths really exist? Rasa lightly snorted, looking at Orochimaru and saying, Orochimaru, with your talent, you should have been able to guess long ago, where exactly do the souls of the dead summoned by the impure world reincarnation technique come from? Orochimaru smiled sinisterly, obviously becoming excited, while Kabuto was already so shocked that he didn't know what to say. So, if I agree, what can I get from you? A wider world seems a bit distant to me? Rasa pondered for a while. You're right, in that case, as long as I successfully capture the 2 to 7-tailed beasts, then, how about I return your hands sealed by the dead demon consuming seal to you first? Orochimaru was taken aback, then his face was full of smiles. Deal. As Orochimaru put on the Akatsuki robe again, Orochimaru's face was also full of nostalgic expressions. Then looking at Rasa and Black Zetsu, he asked. It really brings back memories, so, where are we going next? Rasa already had an idea. We're going to the land of water. Let's capture that only wild three tails first. Konoha. 3 days have passed since Naruto and Sasuke's great battle in the Valley of the End, and Naruto's failure to bring Sasuke back. Because of Rasa's appearance, this time the members of the Sasuke pursuit team did not have the help of the Sand Village trio. Although they ultimately achieved victory, it could be said to be a Pyrrhic victory. Fortunately, the 5th Hokage of Konoha is now the strongest medical ninja in the entire ninja world. Tsunade. Otherwise, it's hard to say whether these people in the Konoha 12 could be saved. Therefore, Jiraiya made up his mind to take Naruto out to train. But when he told Tsunade this suggestion, he was unsurprisingly rejected. As the village's Jinchuriki, the village certainly couldn't let Naruto leave the village. Especially at such a chaotic time. But Jiraiya's domineering words dispelled all of Tsunade's concerns. Tsunade, is there a safer place in this world than by my side? So, Tsunade was persuaded, and Naruto, wanting to become stronger and bring Sasuke back, naturally had no objections. But just as Jiraiya was preparing to leave Konoha with Naruto, an accident occurred. Jiraiya-sama, the Toad Sage wants to see you. Mount Myoboku, in the Toad Sage's massive palace. When Jiraiya saw the Toad Sage again, he was also greatly surprised, because he had never seen such a serious Toad Sage, which was completely different from the senile Toad Sage in his impression. Lord Fukasaku and Lady Shima on the side also looked extremely solemn. This made Jiraiya feel deeply uneasy as he asked, Toad Sage-sama, what is the important matter for which you have summoned me? At this moment, the great Toad Sage's tone was not as playful as before, but rather very serious as he said. Jiraiya, you must remember the following words well. The future has changed, a soul not in fate has appeared. I don't know what this represents, but I saw in my sleep that he is about to attack the tailed beasts and Jinchuriki. If he collects the power of the 9 sacrifices, the entire ninja world will be destroyed. Jiraiya was shocked, wanting to ask more, but the great Toad Sage seemed to be asleep, saying nothing more. Jiraiya could only leave Mount Myoboku with shock and incomprehension. And after Jiraiya left, in a certain mysterious Pure Land world. Hagoromo, what you wanted me to do, I have already arranged. Presumably, Jiraiya will soon notice. However, even you can't know the origin of that strange soul? No. I naturally know his origin, I'm just curious, how exactly did he get rid of my control, but in any case, our plan cannot be disrupted. Now is not the time for Mother to be resurrected. Indra and Asura have not yet grown up. And in front of this talking white-haired old man, a transparent crystal ball floated there. Within the crystal ball, the figures of 2 people were reflected, and in front of them was a huge lake. Since the death of Yagura, the 3 tails Jinchuriki of Kirigakure and the 4th Mizukage, the tailed beast within him, the 3 tails, also died. Fortunately, tailed beasts cannot be killed except through sealing, and it wasn't long before it revived. As for its revival location, Kirigakure naturally knew. Because after the Sage of 6 Paths created the 9-tailed beasts, he found them habitats, and those places became the homes of the tailed beasts. And this lake is the habitat that the Sage of 6 Paths chose for the 3 tails. However, even knowing that the 3 tails had revived, Kirigakure still had no intention of capturing it again. The reason is simple. Kirigakure no longer has the strength to capture and seal tailed beasts. The current Kirigakure is even more pitiful than Sanagakure. Sanagakure has always been poor, but Kirigakure is different. It clearly possesses the powerful 3 great bloodline limit clans and powerful ninja groups like the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. But after the internal chaos within Kirigakure, the 3 great bloodline limit clans were uprooted, and the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist also defected one after another, leading to Kirigakure being plagued by internal and external troubles. If it weren't for Kirigakure having the same geographical advantages as Sanagakure, it's likely that Kirigakure would have been eaten clean by the other major ninja villages long ago. However, although they don't have the ability to capture tailed beasts, Kirigakure still sent people to station themselves at the lake where the Three Tails resides. After all, the Three Tails was exchanged from the first Hokage with a large amount of funds by Kirigakure. If it were captured by someone else, it would be a great loss. Unfortunately, how could these Kirigakure ninjas stationed here be a match for Orochimaru? In just over 10 minutes, these people disappeared silently. On the misty shore, Rasa and Black Zetsu only waited here for a short while. Orochimaru's figure walked out of the forest behind them, with a hint of excitement on his face. Although his hands cannot be used, some of Orochimaru's jutsu are still easy to use against these ninjas. Did you take care of it? Yes, Orochimaru nodded. At this time, Black Zetsu's figure slowly merged into the ground. I have completed the agreement and brought you here. What happens next has nothing to do with me. After saying that, his figure completely disappeared. Orochimaru looked at it with great interest. He had already seen that this guy named Zetsu was not simple and was not just the unremarkable intelligence agent he had imagined. Since that's the case, let's go. As soon as the words fell, Rasa and Orochimaru slowly stepped onto the surface of the lake. In about 10 minutes, the two had already arrived at the center of the lake. The surrounding area was filled with mist. Whether it was Rasa or Orochimaru, they could feel the huge chakra mixed in the mist. Orochimaru looked around, then put his hand into the water, his yellow snake eyes staring under the water. It should be here. I can feel the huge chakra of the Three Tails. Rasa naturally sensed it too. Next, it's up to you, Orochimaru. The reason why Rasa chose Orochimaru as a partner was, of course, because he valued some of this guy's talents, which could save Rasa a lot of trouble. He. Leave it to me. As soon as the words fell, Orochimaru took out a scroll. After opening it, a glass test tube appeared, with purple liquid flowing inside. What is this? Orochimaru smiled sinisterly. A kind of poison I researched, specially used to deal with tailed beasts, which can make their emotions agitated. After saying that, a small white snake crawled out of Orochimaru's sleeve, bit the test tube, and dived into the water. Alright. Next, what we have to do is wait. After doing everything, Orochimaru elegantly stood up again, looked at Rasa, and said with interest. It may take some time for the medicine to take effect, Rasa-kun. I wonder if I can ask you a question? Ask away. He. Why did Rasa-kun choose me? Rasa naturally understood what Orochimaru meant, and looked at the calm lake surface and said lightly. It's very simple, Orochimaru, because you are not someone who submits to fate. Orochimaru was slightly surprised. As a good friend of Jiraiya, you should have heard of his prophecy, right? Ah. Orochimaru seemed to have thought of something and responded softly. In my opinion, you and Jiraiya are two extremes. You are someone who does not submit to fate, but Jiraiya is someone driven by fate. His whole life is spent searching for the so-called child of prophecy. Speaking of this, Rasa suddenly changed the subject and said, Orochimaru, do you believe in fate? A gleam flashed in Orochimaru's eyes, and he slowly said, Rasa-kun, what is the fate you are talking about? Rasa thought for a while and gave an answer. Orochimaru, the reason why you contacted Sasuke and took him away from Konoha is to take over his body through impure world reincarnation, right? Then if I tell you, the so-called fate is, no matter what efforts you make, you will never succeed in taking over Sasuke's body, and instead, everything you do will only complete Uchiha Sasuke. Under Orochimaru's slightly horrified and disbelieving gaze, Rasa slowly turned his head and looked at Orochimaru. From the moment you witnessed the power of Itachi Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan, and were subdued and had your arm cut off by him using Genjutsu, your fate was already sealed. In that instant, Orochimaru suddenly felt cold all over, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Because he suddenly realized it. Indeed, ever since he saw the power of Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan in the Akatsuki organization, and was defeated by the young Itachi, he seemed to be a little too obsessed with the power of the Uchiha clan. This seems normal, the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan is so powerful. However, now that I think about it, something feels wrong everywhere. Because Orochimaru is not ignorant of the Sharingan, and even studied the Sharingan in depth. After all, the Sharingan on Danzo's arm was transplanted by him. He certainly knows the power of the Mangekyo Sharingan, but it shouldn't make him so obsessed to the point of treating that power as God. At this moment, sensing the changes in Orochimaru's chakra, Rasa also sensed something and said with some surprise. I see, Orochimaru. You've been set up. Hearing Rasa's murmur, Orochimaru, who was completely feeling uneasy, asked hesitantly. Rasa-kun, have you discovered something? Ah. Rasa softly said the words that made Orochimaru break out in a cold sweat. Orochimaru, haven't you noticed that you have already fallen into some kind of genjutsu? And if I'm not mistaken, this should be the power of Shisui Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan. Koto Amatsukami. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.